Chapter 201. The light of the demon god Insight's demon god pillar suddenly extinguished, and the aura of both armies changed drastically. The top experts on both sides were stunned. After a brief daze, Angel Demon God Paymon's first reaction was that it was impossible. He could not believe that a knight on a golden pedestal could kill Crosser. Even if Crosser had injured his essence energy from using the Insight spirit-drawing spell, with his support he shouldn't have suffered much damage. As for the knight on a golden pedestal, he was usually only at the 8th grade. So what if he was at the 9th grade? He knew Crosser's strength very well. With the Insight spell, it was almost impossible for him to lose unless the other party already had a domain. However, from the previous battle, he could tell that Long Haochin was an 8th grade knight. On the other side, Chiu Yonghao also had a look of disbelief on his face. But unlike Paimon, his disbelief was filled with surprise. After fighting the demons for so many years, he naturally knew what it meant for the demon god pillar to extinguish. The demon god Insight Crosser's demon god pillar that gave him a headache had extinguished and he had died in battle. This was simply good news that couldn't be any better. For a moment, Chiu Yonghao could not help but laugh loudly and say, "Demon god Insight Crosser died in battle." Upon hearing his reminder, the entire southeastern fortress immediately turned into a sea of joy. Cheers rose and fell. Although the warriors were already exhausted, they were boosted by the good news. For a moment, the faces of the experts in the warrior temple were filled with excitement. Only Long Haochin's companions could not laugh. It was true that demon god Insight Crosser had been killed by Long Haochin, but Long Haochin had yet to turn around. If it wasn't for the fact that Long Haochin had not severed the connection with the soul chains and showed no signs of injury, they would have been even more anxious. All they could do now was continue waiting. After a brief moment of disbelief, Paimon gradually calmed down. The destruction of a demon god pillar was a huge blow to the demon's morale. No matter how much he wanted to take revenge, it wasn't a good time to attack. He had no choice but to order a retreat. At this time, Chiu Yonghao gave the order to clean up the battlefield, and the war finally came to a temporary end. However, the hatred between demons and humans only deepened. Chiu Yonghao flew to Wang Yuanyuan's side and asked in a low voice, "Is he not back yet?" Wang Yuanyuan nodded and said, "Judging from the situation, the acting Holy Knight commander should be fine. However, before he returns, anything can happen. We have to wait here for him to return before we can be at ease." Just like that, they waited for an entire 2 hours. When that dazzling golden light shone at the place where Long Haochin had disappeared, when he reappeared with Crossel's corpse at the top of the southeastern stronghold, the members of the 64th Commander Grade Demon Hunt Squad truly cheered. After casually tossing Crosser's corpse to Lin Xan, Long Haochin bowed respectfully to Chiu Yonghao. Acting Holy Knight Commander Jingjin No. 12 of the Knights Templars greets the Temple Master. Chiu Yonghao laughed and said, "We're all on the same side, so why are you being so polite? Don't tell me I can't recognize you with this metal shell on? I didn't expect you to have grown to this extent in such a short period of time. I really regret it. I should have forced you to stay back then." If he still couldn't recognize the Holy Knight in front of him after hearing Long Haochin's voice, then he would have lived for more than 100 years in vain. Long Haochin said awkwardly, "Temple Master, you think too highly of me." Chiu Yonghao looked at the frozen corpse in Lin Xan's hand. "Did you really kill the demon god Insight in a one-on-one fight?" Long Haochin smiled bitterly. "It can't be said to be a one-on-one fight. It's just that this is my secret." Chiu Yonghao said, "All right, let's not talk about this for now. All of you, follow me back to the warrior temple. Have a good rest first, and then I'll hold a welcoming dinner for you." Not to mention the fact that Long Haochin had done the warrior temple a favor and was highly regarded by Chiu Yonghao. Just the contributions he had made for the warrior temple today, and his identity as the acting Holy Knight Patriarch were enough for Qiu Yonghao to personally receive him. Compared to the Magic Temple, the Warrior Temple was clearly much more enthusiastic about the arrival of Long Haochen and the others. They arranged for them to stay in an excellent house behind the Warrior Temple. Qiu Yonghao even personally led the upper echelons of the Warrior Temple to hold a welcoming dinner for Long Haochen and the others after a day of rest. Long Haochen handed Long Tianin's letter to Qiu Yonghao, and his mission in the Warrior Temple was actually completed. Killing a rank 9 demon god like Crosser gave him 1,000,000 merit points. Qiu Yonghao wasn't a stingy person. Crosser's death was extremely important to the Warrior Temple. Therefore, he specially rewarded Long Haochen with 500,000 merit points. At this point, even Long Haochen didn't know how many merit points he had stored in his merit token. But what was certain was that it was definitely an astronomical figure. 3 demon gods had already died at their hands, and the death of Flaming Lion Demon and Luo Xian was closely related to him. It could be said to be luck, but it could also be said to be strength. 4 of the 72 demon god pillars had been lost on the main battlefield, and the demon god crowns hadn't escaped. They wouldn't be able to recover for at least a few decades. To the demons, this was definitely the most direct blow. After killing the demon god Insight, Long Haochen believed that he had contributed greatly to the southeastern fortress. They could leave immediately and continue heading south to meet up with the others. However, Long Haochen wasn't in a hurry. That was because he had more important things to do. At the same time, he also needed time to recover. It was unknown if it was because Crosser's death was a huge blow to the demons, but the demons stopped attacking. In the blink of an eye, 7 days passed. In the past 7 days, Long Haochen had fully realized how terrifying the sacrifice skill was. It was precisely the sacrifice skill that gave him the strength to kill Crosser. But at the same time, he had been weak for 7 days before he fully recovered. The experience of fighting demon gods was very important, and Long Haochen deliberately recounted the entire process to his companions, including Zhang Fangfang. From Wang Yuanyuan, Long Haochen learned everything that Zhang Fangfang had done for her. The monster hunter's leader, who had lost his companion, had truly gained the trust of Long Haochen and the others. Zhang Fangfang's situation was different from Lin Xian's. He was alone and he was a knight. It could be said that he had nothing to worry about. After discussing with his companions, Long Haochen decided to temporarily absorb him into the commander level Monster Hunt 64. Even though it was beyond the establishment of monster hunters, Zhang Fangfang was willing to do it. Moreover, the situation of Long Haochen's team was special. He would not report to the Monster Hunter's mission tower. As for the Knights Templars, there was no problem. He was now the acting Holy Knight leader, and he did not need to report to anyone when he transferred a Temple Knight to follow him. Is everyone ready? Long Haochen looked at his companions around him. At this time, everyone was in their military uniform. After a week of rest, Wang Yuanyuan and Zhang Fangfang had fully recovered. At this time, she was in high spirits, and her cold, murderous aura was gone. Compared to 2 years ago, she was more mature in terms of cultivation, will, and body. Zhang Fangfang was more reserved. His calm demeanor was something that even Long Haochen could not compare to. After all, in terms of age, Zhang Fangfang had more maturity than him. Hearing Long Haochen's question, everyone nodded. At this time, they stood in a circle around Long Haochen. From the looks of it, they were ready to enter the battle at any time. Long Haochen said, "Haoyue is about to evolve again. It is very likely that he will evolve into a 6th head. Although the last evolution was very successful, we still have to be cautious. I'm starting." After receiving confirmation from his companions again, a golden light flashed in Long Haochen's eyes, and he activated Eternal Melody. He brought everyone into the Tower of Eternity, and then teleported back to the previous room alone, activating the blood contract teleportation with Haoyue. That day, when he was fighting the demon god of Insight Godseal, Long Haochen discovered that Haoyue was already on the verge of evolution. With Godseal's demon god crown, evolution would definitely not be a problem. However, from Haoyue's emotions at that time, he could sense that the evolution this time would probably not be as smooth as when it evolved a fifth head. Therefore, Long Haochen and his companions stayed in the southeastern fortress. After their strength was fully restored, the first thing they would do was to help Haoyue evolve successfully before moving on to the next step. There was no need for Long Haochen to explain anything. His companions also understood the importance of Haoyue's evolution, not to mention the close relationship between Haoyue and Long Haochen. His ability to destroy the demon god pillars alone could be said to be the general class Monster Hunt 64's trump card. With a flash of purple light, Long Haochen once again came to the world of darkness and fire. Haoyue was still in a cave. The arrival of Long Haochen made him very excited, and his 5 big heads immediately came up to him to show affection. A pair of huge wings also spread out behind him. As his body grew larger, Haoyue also appeared more and more powerful. Although his cultivation was only at the peak of rank 7, Long Haochen always felt that Haoyue's true strength was not as simple as it seemed. Haoyue, are you ready? Long Haochen stroked their big heads one by one. With Light in the lead, the 5 heads nodded at the same time, with some excitement, but also seemed a little nervous. Don't worry, I will definitely do my best to protect you, Long Haochen comforted. Haoyue transmitted a thought to Long Haochen, actually taking him outside of the cave to evolve. Although Long Haochen felt strange, he did not ask too much. Haoyue must have his reasons for doing this. After leaving the cave, Long Haochen could not help but sigh slightly. In this world of darkness and fire, it seemed that there would never be daylight. The turbid air made him not dare to breathe directly. He activated the holy light barrier to protect himself. The temperature of the air was so high that when he looked into the distance, he could actually see some distorted light in the shape of water. In this harsh environment, Haoyue acted as if nothing had happened. His body slowly crept outside the cave entrance, and his 5 big heads raised at the same time, looking at the sky. He opened his mouth and actually swallowed the turbid air, as if he wanted to absorb such air for cultivation. Golden light flashed, and his companions were teleported to Long Haochen's side one by one. They immediately took action. Long Haochen, Zhang Fangfang Hanyu, and Wang Yuanyuan stood guard in 4 different directions. Lin Xan was in the middle, while Kai directly disappeared beside Long Haochen. Haoyue, we can begin. There was no time to lose. The earlier they finished, the earlier they could leave this world. Light opened his mouth, and a dark blue light floated out of it. It was the demon god's crown of Godseal. At this moment, the demon god's crown had clearly lost its spirituality. After flying out of Light's mouth, it simply floated in front of Light. Misty purple light began to radiate from Haoyue's body. This time it was no longer faint purple, but almost solid purple light. Long Haochen had only seen this purple light once when Haoyue destroyed the snake demon god Andamari's demon god pillar. 5 rays of purple light shot out from Haoyue's 5 big heads at the same time and shot at the demon god's crown. Immediately, with a boom, the demon god's crown instantly exploded, bursting out a large expanse of dark blue light. Little light, little fire, little green, little blue, and little purple devoured all the mist in the air like a whale sucking in water. At the same time, purple light, filled with supreme majesty, burst out of his body. The bulge that had already protruded began to wriggle violently. Roar! Haoyue's 5 big heads roared at the sky at the same time. Immediately, the intense purple light on its body turned into a huge pillar of light that shot into the sky. The filthy air in the surroundings melted like snow meeting boiling water, and the surrounding vision became clear. After the pillar of purple light shot to an extremely high position, it began to move rapidly, circling once in the air, outlining a purple hexagram. Immediately after, the thick purple light suddenly split into 5 parts, each pouring into a corner of the hexagram. The bulge on the side of Hao Yue's neck burst open, and a new big head drilled out. As soon as it appeared, it also released a purple light pillar that shot into the sky, occupying the last empty space in the hexagram. Such a strange scene had never appeared in Hao Yue's previous evolution. As the 6 rays of purple light poured into the purple hexagram, it immediately erupted with an unparalleled purple brilliance. It was as if a purple sun had suddenly appeared in the sky, bringing a layer of purple to the world that Long Haochen and the others could see. No wonder it had to come out to evolve. Hao Yue's evolution this time was actually so powerful. It was impossible not to attract the attention of the undead creatures in this world. Hao Yue's tail slowly rose up, and Long Haochen, who was the closest to it, could clearly hear that within Hao Yue's body, its bones were making crisp, crackling sounds. This kind of rhythmic crackling sound made Long Haochen feel that all the bones in his body were aching. At the same time, the purple light pattern on his forehead also began to emit a dazzling light. He and Hao Yue were connected by the most intimate blood contract. When Hao Yue's body underwent a huge change, he would also feel it strongly. After sensing the change in Hao Yue's body, Long Haochen immediately understood why Hao Yue created this strange purple hexagram. To Hao Yue, this should be a formation to absorb energy. When it evolved to 6 heads, its own strength was no longer enough to complete the entire evolution process. It had to absorb some special energy that belonged to this world to replenish itself, so that the evolution process could be completed perfectly. As expected, under the illumination of the purple hexagram, spots of purple dust began to appear in the air, and these tiny purple lights immediately gathered towards the purple hexagram like rivers flowing into the sea. At first, Long Haochen and the rest thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them, but soon the purple dust became more and more numerous and gathered from all directions. A shocking scene appeared. A large number of purple lights revolved around the 6 purple light pillars released by Hao Yue, and like a huge purple tornado, they gathered towards the purple hexagram in the sky. This strange energy was then fed back to Hao Yue's body through the hexagram. The purple color on Hao Yue's body began to become thicker, and its thick body did not expand, but the scales on its body were completely evolving towards purple. After going through the evolution of the 5th head, Hao Yue's scales turned dark purple, and now his scales were evolving towards the appearance of amethyst. Every scale became more plump, and gradually 3 ridges appeared on them, forming a shuttle shape. Just one scale alone gave people a magnificent feeling. The horns on Hao Yue's 6 heads also emitted the light of its own attribute. On the 6th head, the yellow horn was like a crown, and it even looked a little like a cracked tomato. There was a faint brownish red halo inside it. Earth attribute, without a doubt, Hao Yue's 6th head was of the earth attribute. The appearance of this head also complemented the basic elements of Hao Yue's own attributes. Water, fire, earth, and wind gathered together, in addition to light and poison. Long Haochen suspected that Hao Yue's next head would evolve into the darkness attribute. If that was the case, it would have all 6 basic attributes. Long Haochen paid attention to the changes in Hao Yue's body, and at the same time magnified his spiritual perception to feel everything in the outside world. Han, you also summoned the evil eye. No, it should be called the evil eye overlord now. The evil eye, which had grown a lot in size, had a great increase in its abilities. However, when it saw Hao Yue, it could not help but shrink beside Han Yu in fear. It only calmed down after Han Yu repeatedly comforted it. This time, Hao Yue's body did not grow bigger, but instead it seemed to shrink. Its originally mountain-like body gradually underwent some strange changes. Its lizard-like body became more dragon-like, less bloated and more majestic. Coupled with the amethyst-like scales, it gave off an indescribable sense of beauty. The purple light in the sky became more and more intense, but Long Haochen's gaze also became serious. According to the situation, when Haoyue broke through in the past, the undead creatures that belonged to this world should have already reacted when it caused such a huge commotion. However, until now, the undead creatures did not move at all, as if they did not sense its existence at all. However, the more it was like this, the more pressure Long Haochen felt. Vaguely, he seemed to feel an overwhelming pressure gradually forming. However, even with his spiritual perception, he could not detect if this pressure was real or where it was coming from. Time passed by, and the changes in Haoyue's body were gradually completed. The huge purple hexagram in the sky continuously absorbed the purple light spots from all directions to replenish its body. Haoyue's evolution also caused a strange change in Long Haochen's body. He felt that the spiritual power in his body began to rise again. The speed of the rise was not fast, but it seemed that the majesty that appeared on Haoyue's body had also begun to appear on his body. In particular, the purple light pattern on his forehead became brighter and brighter. Even his eyes had become the same purple-gold color as Haoyue's. Long Haochen discovered that whether it was his adamantine base armor, Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield, or Eternal Melody, these three pieces of equipment that were at least epic level or above began to tremble slightly after Haoyue's aura appeared on his body, as if they were submitting to him. The most obvious feeling came from the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield. Long Haochen slowly raised his left hand, and he was surprised to find that even in the absence of Lingang, the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield began to emit a faint 7-colored golden light. That was the light of an artifact. Haoyue, oh Haoyue, what a powerful existence you are. Your evolution seems to have been leading the evolution of my body. Long Haochen understood that after Haoyue's evolution was completed, his strength should also be able to rise to a higher level. The improvement of spiritual power was secondary. It seemed that his body constitution had undergone a strange change again. After all, he was originally a god-favored, and the Son of Light's constitution was far superior to ordinary people. Under such circumstances, his constitution could still continue to improve. One could imagine how powerful Haoyue's original existence was. Long Haochen faintly felt that Haoyue's original strength seemed to be of a higher level than his and Kai Er's god-favored constitution. Of course, this was only his guess. Long Haochen had tried to ask Haoyue, but every time Haoyue just kept silent and did not give him any answer. Long Haochen had always treated Haoyue as his good brother, so naturally he would not force him to do anything. However, the more he did so, the more curious he was. He could accept Haoyue in any situation, but it was impossible for him not to be curious. At this moment, the slight feeling that Long Haochen had from before became reality. The sky in the distance suddenly turned dark purple. In the beginning, Long Haochen thought that it was the strange purple light that Haoyue had attracted, but he soon realized that it was not the case. This was because the dark purple light was not a light spot, but appeared in a large area like the light of dawn. Moreover, when the purple light appeared, a huge pressure that was like the power of heaven descended from the sky. When the pressure appeared, the world outside of the 6-pointed star released by Haoyue turned dark purple. Even the magma flowing in the cracks on the ground was no exception. Long Haochen sucked in a breath of cold air. What kind of power would be needed to achieve this? He could vaguely feel that the enemy that was about to appear was probably even stronger than the strongest person he had encountered on the battlefield, the undead demon god, Samakina. Moreover, it was the undead demon god that was using the power of the demon god pillars. An existence of this level was probably the ruler of this world. Under the shock, Long Haochen became even calmer. He said in a low voice, "Prepare the conjoined spirit-increasing pill." Yes, his companions replied in unison. They were all experienced and knowledgeable demon hunters. If Long Haochen could feel the strength of the enemy, they could naturally feel it too. Lin Xian passed a conjoined spirit-increasing pill to Zhang Fangfang, and the others each held one in their hands. This was their last trump card in the commander level Monster Hunt 64. Ever since their cultivation had risen to rank 6, they had never used it. After Lin Xian's modification, the conjoined spirit increasing pill was much more powerful than before. Not only could it enhance their conjoined spirit increasing pill, but it could also improve their overall spiritual power. At the same time, there were fewer side effects. After all, the new version of the conjoined spirit-increasing pill was mainly made from the demonic crystal of a Lord-level demon. Naturally, it could not be compared to the previous version. The dark purple light became denser and denser. A faint sigh sounded in the air, and the huge pressure instantly increased to the extreme. Then, a figure appeared out of thin air. Yes, there was only one enemy. She had a slim figure, and she looked like a human as she floated in the air. She was shrouded in a large cloak that completely covered her head. In her right hand, she held a dark purple magic staff. Her magic staff looked like a long bone, and the purple light emitted from both ends was the most intense. Long Houchen took a step forward, and his companions immediately gathered behind him. At the same time, a golden light separated from his body. It was Yi Ting. The two divine swords were also handed to Long Houchen. After the dark purple figure appeared, she did not attack them immediately. Instead, she turned towards the hexagram that Hao Yue had set up in the sky. She slowly raised the staff in her hand, and a low but pleasant voice sounded in the air. It sounded like a woman's voice, but the language was something that Long Houchen and the others had never heard before. Take the pill and follow me. Long Houchen let out a low grunt and was the first to toss the conjoined forest growth pill into his mouth. At the same time, the 4 golden wings on his back instantly unfurled. With a flash, he soared into the sky. The others also took the conjoined spirit-increasing pill at the same time and followed Long Houchen up into the sky. Long Houchen, Kai, Lin Xian, Wang Yuan, Zhang Fong Han Yu. All 6 of them, along with Yi Ting, flew up into the sky. The evil eye followed closely behind Han Yu, its tentacles wrapped around Han Yu's waist, as though Han Yu was carrying it on his back. Han, you could clearly feel that the evil eye overlord's body had started to tremble violently after the figure appeared in the sky. It was an uncontrollable trembling, and an intense fear was transmitted into Han Yu's heart through the contract between them. This was definitely a Type 9 powerhouse, and definitely not an ordinary one. Han Yu was secretly shocked, but he did not warn Long Houchen. What he could feel, Long Houchen could naturally feel as well. This battle was going to be extremely difficult. With a pair of swords by his side, Long Houchen brought his companions and flew into the sky in a straight line. The people behind him all placed their hands on the shoulders of the person in front of them. A huge amount of spiritual energy began to flow into Long Houchen's body. The aria of the goddess of light, blue rain and hibiscus of light began to emit a dazzling lingang. The orange-red and turquoise colors were so obvious in the sky. The others also noticed that, apart from the pure light elements around Long Houchen's body, there was an additional layer of faint purplish gold light, making him look even more majestic. Soon, Long Houchen and his companions arrived in front of the cloaked enemy, right between her and Hao Yue. Without saying a word, Long Houchen's swords had already slashed out. Cross-slash, the strongest attack skill he could use at the moment. With the support of his companions, Long Houchen's spiritual energy broke through 100,000 in an instant. With the addition of the adamantine base armor, the power he could use now had reached the highest level in his life. Moreover, Long Houchen was surprised to find that with so much spiritual energy flowing into his body, he did not feel bloated at all. Moreover, the spiritual acupoints that were faintly forming at his crotch had actually completed at this time. In other words, Long Houchen had now opened as many as 7 spiritual acupoints. Opening spiritual acupoints was the most difficult and the most important for all high-level professions. As soon as these 2 spiritual acupoints were opened, Long Houchen immediately felt that his cultivation had reached a higher level. The epic brilliance of the two divine swords condensed in the air, and that dark blue light flew straight towards the cloaked enemy. In the sky, because of the intervention of the third party, Long Houchen and his companions, there was a strong spiritual energy, fluctuation. As a god's favored, and with the strong support of his companions, Long Houchen could definitely be described as the strongest person in the world at this time. After 2 years of accumulation, the commander-level Monster Hunt 64 indeed had the strength to compete with the demons ranked after 36th. Ding. A melodious buzzing sound rang in the air. The enemy, who was chanting an incantation, stretched out her left hand from under her robe. It was a woman's hand that looked very slender and slender. Her white, jade-like palm was crystal clear. It could be said that it was the most beautiful palm that Long Houchen and his companions had ever seen. However, this white, jade-like hand was a little too pale. It was so pale that there was not the slightest trace of blood. It gave people a very strange and even frightening feeling. It was this hand, one index finger and one fingertip, that gently touched Long Houchen's conjoined spiritual attack. The crisscross slash was an attack that was comparable to the full attack of a divine artifact. With this crisscross slash, Long Houchen had killed the Cyan Goblin riding demon-type Gale and the Insight Demon God Crosser's parasitic body. However, at this moment, such a powerful attack was blocked by the white, jade-like finger. A layer of dark blue light spread from her fingers, causing her slender figure to tremble slightly. Her incantation stopped just like that. Although Long Houchen's attack did not cause her any harm, it still interrupted her incantation. "It's you creatures from the other world again." A cold voice rang in the hearts of Long Houchen and his companions. It was not a verbal communication, but Long Houchen and his companions could clearly feel the enemy's intention. At this moment, Long Houchen was the most shocked. Although he had interrupted the enemy's incantation, it was just a finger. Just a finger was enough to block his strongest attack. Even with the two epic-grade godly swords, coupled with his spiritual power and pure light elements, he had only managed to interrupt the enemy's incantation. What kind of strength was this? You have Austin and Griffin's aura on you. No wonder you could stop my incantation. It seems that you were the one who guided it to another plane. You really have guts. I will kill you first, and then I will kill it. The cold voice was filled with anger, but it gave off a strange feeling of gentleness. If Long Houchen had stayed in this world for a while longer when Haiyue was evolving his third head, he would have recognized the enemy in front of him who was shrouded in a large cloak. It was one of the most powerful undead lords in this world, the Lich King. The Lich King pointed the bone staff in his hand at Long Houchen, and a small purple bubble flew out and went straight for Long Houchen. At the same time, the dark purple light in the sky behind the Lich King became more intense, and in an instant it enveloped Long Houchen and his companions. The huge pressure seemed to be overwhelming, and the strong dark aura seemed to be able to oppress Long Houchen and his companions to death. After all, this was not a plane that belonged to Long Houchen, and he could not even borrow the power of the Goddess of Light. However, as a favorite of God, he had already created countless miracles, so how could he be timid in front of the Lich King? Long Houchen suddenly put away the two swords in his hands, and at the same time, he let out a long roar towards the sky. A strong golden flame instantly surged out of his body, and a strong light like the sun suddenly illuminated the sky with a golden color. An incomparably holy aura bloomed from Long Houchen's body, and no matter how strong the dark purple light was, it could not penetrate the golden light. The holy light spiritual power was the greatest nemesis of the undead. Although Long Houchen could not be replenished by the light spiritual power in this world, it also meant that the light element in this world was precious and special. No matter how strong the Lich King was, she was still an undead, and in the face of such pure light elements, she could only be defeated. Her powerful domain could not do anything to Long Houchen. At this time, the purple bubble had also hit in front of Long Houchen. In the face of this strange and powerful bubble, Long Houchen would not be careless. A colorful golden light suddenly bloomed, and a large light spread out with his body as the core. It was the Guardian Knight's skill shield wall. Chi-chi. A series of strange sounds rang from the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield. Through the shield, Long Houchen could also be shocked by the horrible corrosive power of the purple bubble. Chapter 202. However, just like how the Lich King's domain was restrained by Long Houchen, the shield in Long Houchen's hands, the Sun-Moon Divine Snail, had a strong restraining effect on all undead and dark magic. The impact of the purple bubbles was not strong, relying on the powerful corrosive power of darkness. At this time, in front of the Sun-Moon Divine Snail, they could only silently wither away. Being able to block the opponent's attack made Long Houchen heave a sigh of relief. Although the Lich King was strong, his attributes seemed to be restrained by him. Moreover, under the effects of the series of enhancements and his companion's spiritual enhancement, Long Houchen's current cultivation had also risen to a rather terrifying level. His companions were all Type 7 powerhouses with a spiritual energy of more than 10,000. 5 Type 7 powerhouses provided him with more than 60,000 spiritual energy. In addition to his own spiritual energy, even without the Golden Foundation armor, he was already a Type 9 powerhouse. Coupled with the replenishment from the armor, his overall spiritual energy was now more than 150,000. Furthermore, he was fully equipped with epic grade and above equipment. It would not be that easy for the Lich King to kill him. With a cold snort, the Lich King started chanting the same strange incantation as before. One after another, purple Cheongsam flew out from her staff. These bubbles were of different sizes, and as they flew towards Long Houchen, they left a dark, distorted trail in the sky. As they flew, they actually broke through space. Furthermore, this was done by relying on the corrosive power. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the power of these bubbles was. A golden light flashed in Long Houchen's eyes. Although he relied on the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield to block the opponent's attack, the powerful corrosive power of the bubbles was also rapidly consuming his spiritual energy. If this continued, he would not be able to hold on for long. Yu-Ting, Long Houchen shouted. He and Yu-Ting's minds were linked. Yu-Ting was his most powerful spiritual stove. She had successively absorbed the Saint's spiritual stove and a large amount of various kinds of energy. The current her, in terms of her degree of evolution, even Long Houchen did not know how strong she was. The Lich King's strength was unfathomable, with a conservative estimate of 300,000 spiritual energy. Furthermore, in this plane, her strength must have been greatly enhanced. Long Houchen did not know how long Haoyue would need. If they continued to passively take a beating, they would only be waiting for death. He had to find a way to deal with the opponent. Yu-Ting had been floating beside Long Houchen. Hearing his call, Yu-Ting raised the golden staff in her hand. A golden light shot out from the staff in her hand, heading straight for the Lich King. When the golden light shot out, Yu-Ting's chest also flashed with a golden light, and a small golden cauldron appeared in front of her chest. The Lich King stretched out his left hand and pointed at the golden light in the air. Strangely, the golden light was not affected by her finger and still fell on the Lich King. It could be seen that the golden light was like a rope coiling around the Lich King's waist. Then it tightened and pulled her towards Long Houchen. This is, not to mention the Lich King, even Long Houchen's companions did not know what ability Yu-Ting used. She actually ignored the opponent's defense and completed the entanglement and pulling. Even with the Lich King's strength, he seemed to be unable to resist. Success! Long Houchen was overjoyed. An intense 7-colored golden light suddenly burst out from the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield, smashing the purple bubbles in the air. The aria of the goddess of light returned to his right hand. In an instant, Long Houchen seemed to have completely fused with the divine sword. The swift and fierce sword intent caused the air around him to distort, and an ear-piercing whistle resounded through the sky. The divine sword flashed with a dazzling orange radiance and went straight for the Lich King. It turned out that after the brief exchange with the Lich King, Long Houchen already felt that this enemy should be a necromancer similar to human magicians. Her magic was indeed powerful, so powerful that Long Houchen had never seen anything like it in his life. Relying on the divine artifact Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield and his spiritual energy of more than 150,000, it was very difficult to resist. However, since her magic was so powerful, her physical strength naturally would not be too strong. Directly attacking her body might be able to play a decisive role. The golden light shot out from Yu Ting's staff was the formidable ability of the Saint's spiritual stove after its evolution. After absorbing the gem left behind by the demon god of Insight Crosser, the Saint's spiritual stove underwent a mutation. Although it did not increase the range of the Saint's spiritual stove's effect, nor did it produce the insight spirit guiding technique that Long Houchen had imagined, an extremely special additional attribute appeared. It was precisely this additional attribute that was enough to make the Saint's spiritual stove enter the power of a type of spiritual stove. Of course, this ability was now directly attributed to Yu Ting, because the Saint's spiritual stove was originally a part of her. This additional attribute was the absolute validity. The absolute validity was only effective under the Saint's spiritual stove's traction ability. In other words, as long as Yu Ting launched the traction ability, no matter how powerful the opponent was, they would definitely be successfully pulled in front of Long Houchen. The traction range was only 100 meters. In other words, once the opponent entered within 100 meters of Yu Ting, the traction would be complete. Compared to the Insight soul guiding technique, this absolutely effective attraction was still a far cry. However, one must never forget that the Insight spirit guiding technique was not guaranteed to succeed. There were also many limitations. Although the traction range was very limited, it was absolutely valid. Within a range of 100 meters, this was simply comparable to the ability of a divine tool. Of course, the premise was that Long Houchen was certain to be able to defeat the opponent. Moreover, after the Saint's spiritual stove's evolution, it could only be used 3 times a day. The Lich King's ice-cold thought emerged in Long Houchen's mind. In your dreams, did Long Houchen's godly sword cut through? It really did. However, what he cut through was a deep purple mist. When the Lich King was pulled in front of Long Houchen, the traction effect of the Saint's spiritual stove disappeared. That sword brimming with swift and fierce sword intent did not have any real effect. The Lich King unexpectedly turned into a thick mist, allowing the aria of the goddess of light to pass through that mist. Mist? No, this enemy was directly in existence, similar to a vengeful spirit. Long Houchen was shocked and almost subconsciously made a reaction. A strong 7-colored golden light suddenly shot out from the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield and fell on the Lich King's mist. Suddenly, a mournful scream sounded. The purple-black mist quickly floated far away for thousands of meters, and once again condensed into the Lich King's appearance. However, her body in the air was obviously somewhat unstable. She was obviously injured. The divine tool, transformed from the starlight, divine beast, had the purest light attribute. That's right, the Lich King without a physical body was immune to any physical attack. However, the illumination of light was enough to hurt her. Of course, this also needed to be powerful enough. The Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield obviously had this kind of ability. The intense 7-colored golden light reverberated in the air. Long Houchen also had the time to breathe a sigh of relief. In the end, the opponent was still injured. He did not chase after her. Protecting Hao Yue was the most important thing. It seems that I have underestimated you. The Lich King's voice became even colder, and there was a hint of extreme anger in the coldness. She did not use her full strength against Long Houchin because she could feel the huge gap between her and the enemy in front of her. She wanted to save more strength to deal with Haoyue. Austin and Griffin were not that easy to destroy. Even an existence like the Lich King did not have absolute confidence in dealing with the Lich King, who had evolved to 6 heads. However, she did not expect Long Houchin to be so difficult to deal with. With his pure light spiritual power and a divine tool like the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield, he forcefully stalled the Lich King. At this moment, the light of the purple hexagram formed by the bright moon in the sky had begun to dim, but its body was shining brighter and brighter. It looked more like a giant dragon than a lizard. His 6 big heads had also become more like dragon heads, coupled with his strong body and the wings that had transformed into the form of dragon wings. His aura began to become stronger. It would not take long for his evolution to be completed. Even though the Lich King had a powerful cultivation base, she could not help but panic when she sensed the resentment in Haoyue's eyes. Having experienced the earth-shattering battle back then, she knew how powerful Austin and Griffin were. He must not be allowed to complete his evolution and escape again. Otherwise, she did not know if she could restrain him the next time. At the thought of this, the Lich King let out a shriek. Countless dark purple light spheres appeared in the sky. Each of these light spheres was more than a meter in diameter, and they flew straight at Long Houchin and the others like a purple meteor shower. At the same time, they flew towards Haoyue and his purple hexagram. The Lich King pointed her staff forward and chanted a series of incantations. Cracks began to appear in the sky, and a purplish-black haze rose from her body. After the purplish-black haze rose, the Lich King's aura became weaker. She had indeed been injured by the Sun Moon Divine Snail's colorful golden light. She had underestimated Long Houchin and underestimated this favored one. At this moment, the Lich King had unleashed her full strength. Long Houchin dared not delay. He flew back with his companions and stood in front of Haoyue. He was alone, so he could not care about the purple hexagram in the sky. All he could do now was to protect Haoyue's body. The colorful golden light blossomed again, and the shield wall reappeared. At the same time, Long Houchin chanted an incantation together with Yuting. Light prayer. He did not know what kind of powerful skill the Lich King would cast next, but it was definitely the right choice to prepare a light prayer. The purple light balls were much stronger than the previous bubbles. Not only were they highly corrosive, but they also had a terrifying impact. After Long Houchin blocked dozens of them, he and his companions continued to retreat with the defensive power of the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield. The spiritual power of the body enhancement skill was decreasing at a terrifying speed. If this continued, Long Houchin would not be able to complete the light prayer spell. At this moment, a ray of purple light shot down from the hexagram in the sky and landed on Long Houchin's body. In an instant, Long Houchin felt the blood in his body surge, and an indescribable power suddenly burst out from his body. This power had nothing to do with his spiritual energy, and caused his skin to completely turn purplish gold. His retreating footsteps also came to an abrupt halt as he forcibly maintained the shield wall in front of him. This strange power gave Long Houchin the feeling that it was an external spiritual power, an extreme external spiritual power. The strange purplish gold color even dyed the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield, as if it had added a protective layer to this artifact shield. The purple light balls launched by the Lich King bombarded the hexagram in the sky, but to no avail. The hexagram emitted layers of dense purple light that completely dissolved the purple light balls. However, at this moment, a deafening roar sounded in the sky. Huge figures emerged from the cracks that were torn by the Lich King. Bone dragons, which were made of pale bones and had dark purple flames dancing in their eye sockets, emerged from the cracks and pounced on Long Houchin and Haoyue. That was over 100 bone dragons. They were one of the ultimate undead creatures, the bone dragons. There was a certain gap between ordinary bone dragons and real dragons, but every bone dragon was an undead powerhouse at the peak of the 8th rank. They had powerful spiritual power and physical strength. In Long Houchen's world, perhaps only the Demon Emperor's heaven-defying demon dragon army could contend against hundreds of bone dragons that appeared out of nowhere. Long Houchen and his companions couldn't help but turn pale. An even more terrifying scene was yet to come. The Lich King's purplish-black domain silently covered the bone dragons, causing their bones to turn purplish-black. The bone dragons that were all at the peak of the 8th rank actually broke through to the 9th rank just like that. In an instant, the sky was covered by clouds. They pounced on Long Houchen and the rest. After completing this terrifying summoning, the Lich King was still chanting her incantation. She flew back into the sky and raised her staff high in the face of Haoyue's purple hexagram. It seemed that the purpose of so many terrifying and powerful bone dragons was to make it impossible for Long Houchen and the rest to stop her incantation. At this instant, Long Houchen's mind raced, and he instantly made a decision. Under the surprised gaze of his companions, he took the initiative to end the body enhancement, turned around quickly, and instantly struck out 5 palms. Each palm brought with it a golden light, sending Kai, Wang Yuan Yuan, Lin Xian, Zhang Fang Fang Hanyu, and the Evil Eye Lord back to the Tower of Eternity. At this moment, the bone dragons had already begun to pounce. Meanwhile, Long Houchen strangely no longer cared about Haoyue. He suddenly soared up, the 4 wings on his back bursting with dazzling golden light. Light speed flash. He flew up toward the bone dragons, sticking closely to the 6 purple light pillars released by Haoyue. Light speed flash was extremely fast. In almost a flash, he was already high in the sky, coming face to face with the bone dragons. After losing the enhancement from the body enhancement, Long Houchen's power had been greatly reduced, falling to the level 9. However, he displayed his flying skills to the extreme. One could clearly see that he was twisting and turning in midair, not sparing any spiritual energy to fully display light speed flash, forcibly breaking through the gaps between the bone dragons. After all, these bone dragons had just been summoned, so they were slightly sluggish as they pounced. Faced with Long Houchen's breakthrough, the few bone dragons closest to him immediately launched attacks, but most of them were dodged by Long Houchen. Only one bone dragon's claw slammed onto the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield. Although the bone dragons had been elevated to the level 9 level with the help of the Lich King's domain, the defense of the level 8 Long Houchen and the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield was not so easily broken. Moreover, with the addition of a layer of purplish gold on his body, his external spiritual energy was extraordinarily strong. He actually shook the bone dragon to the side, and his figure flashed again, rising higher into the sky. A golden belt of light flashed again, entangling the Lich King without any fancy moves. Traction. The moment Long Houchen activated light speed flash, Yuting attached herself to him from behind. After a series of twisting and turning in Long Houchen's direction, he was finally within 100 meters of the Lich King. The aria of the Goddess of Light's orange-red radiance appeared again, along with the sword intent of the body and sword fusion. At the same time, the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield emitted the strongest 7-colored golden light. At this moment, Long Houchen's eyes were shining, but he was extremely calm and steady. The Bone Dragon Army was terrifying, but the Lich King was even more terrifying. What he had to do was to stop the Lich King's incantation. Haoyue was evolving and couldn't communicate with him, but Long Houchen could feel the changes in his emotions. When the Bone Dragon Army appeared, Haoyue's emotions didn't fluctuate at all, but when the Lich King appeared in front of the hexagram and began to chant again, Haoyue's emotions fluctuated extremely violently. Weighing the pros and cons, Long Houchen immediately made an accurate judgment. He first teleported his partners away to ensure their safety. The Lich King let out an angry scream, when she was dragged to Long Houchen again. She never expected Long Houchen to make such a judgment and have the ability to break out of the Bone Dragon army's encirclement. At this moment, at least 4 bone dragons were chasing behind Long Houchen and attacking him. However, the Lich King's incantation was ultimately interrupted. Boom! A circle of intense, purplish-black light exploded around Long Houchen's body. His sword intent was forcibly blown apart. The terrifying explosive force caused Long Houchen to spit out a mouthful of blood. However, at the same time, he completed the defense of the shield wall. The Sun Moon Divine Snail shield that was shining with colorful golden light was extremely sturdy. At that moment, the Sun Moon Divine Snail shield not only withstood the Lich King's magical bombardment, but it also withstood the attacks of the 4 bone dragons. With the layer of purplish gold on his body and the powerful defense of the Sun Moon Divine Snail shield, Long Houchen managed to withstand the attacks. However, at this moment, he was also in a desperate situation. He was surrounded by 4 bone dragons and the Lich King, who was extremely powerful in necromagic. He had no way out now. It was also at this moment that a deafening roar sounded from below. A strange scene appeared. There were over 100 bone dragons. After hearing this roar, their bodies actually all became sluggish. Even the Lich King's body froze. In the sky, the huge purple hexagram exploded, and a huge purple halo instantly spread out, enveloping the entire battlefield. The dancing flames in the eye sockets of each bone dragon became extremely intense, giving people the feeling that they could be extinguished at any time. They curled up their bodies with all their might and did their best to protect their soul flames. From the looks of it, it was extremely difficult for them to even protect themselves, let alone attack. With a flash of purplish gold light, Long Houchen disappeared into thin air from the encirclement just like that. When he reappeared, he had already landed on Hao Yue's back. Hao Yue, who had transformed into a dragon, had already completed his evolution. That roar was made by his 6 big heads at the same time. Little light, little fire, little green, little blue, little purple, and little yellow, who had just been born and had a split tomato horn on his head. The 6 big heads radiated with power. After the evolution, Hao Yue's spiritual power aura was only around the 8th rank of a human expert, but the layer of purple light emitted from his body caused the huge bone dragon legion and even the Lich King to feel fear. 6 pairs of cold eyes focused on the Lich King. The Lich King let out another scream, and the cloak on her body actually dissipated into a black fog, revealing her true form. She had a perfect female body, and her delicate body was completely naked, but she had a skull on her head. She frantically waved her bone staff downwards. Rays of intense purplish-black light bombarded Hao Yue. Roar! With another roar, the intense purple light rippled again, and the Lich King's attack instantly vanished into thin air in front of the purple light. Hao Yue flapped her huge wings and brazenly flew up with Long Houchen, smashing into a bone dragon that was desperately protecting its soul flames. In the next instant, with a flash of golden light, she and Long Houchen had already disappeared into the dark night sky. No, the Lich King roared frantically. Her rage caused all the bone dragons to tremble. However, she still failed and could only watch helplessly as Hao Yue completed another evolution. She now had a 6th head. Her failure wasn't because she wasn't strong enough. In the face of the purple aura emitted by Hao Yue, she couldn't even unleash 50% of her strength. In the end, when she summoned the Bone Dragon Legion, she had to use all her strength to resist the fear in her heart. Otherwise, how could Long Houchen and the others stop this powerful undead monarch? Even in the world that Hao Yue came from, the Lich King's cultivation was ranked among the top few. After the extreme rage, an indescribable chill spread in the Lich King's heart. She couldn't describe the feeling in her heart at this moment, but she faintly felt that the incomparably terrifying Austin and Griffin seemed to have returned. Before Hao Yue and Long Houchen left, The moment when the 6 pairs of purple eyes stared at her had been deeply imprinted in her memory. The fear that came from the depths of her soul even made the Lich King detonate her cloak. However, no matter what, she failed. Do I still have one more chance or two? The Lich King wasn't sure herself. The 6-headed Haoyue already had such a strong suppression effect on her aura. In that case, if she wanted to find him again, she would have to wait for him to evolve again. However, after evolving again, could she still control him? The deep sense of helplessness gradually turned into extreme fear, and the Lich King let out another scream. Tower of Eternity. When Long Haochen and Haoyue returned, Long Haochen could only feel that his back was drenched in cold sweat. The battle just now was too dangerous. If it wasn't for Haoyue's help, he would have died in the battle. In any case, he couldn't abandon Haoyue and teleport back to the Tower of Eternity by himself. What kind of existence was that undead creature? Her undead magic was very different from that of the undead demon god Samakina, but it was more direct and more terrifying. Especially the scene of summoning hundreds of bone dragons at the end. It was too shocking. If it wasn't for Haoyue who deterred those bone dragons, he was afraid that he would have been torn apart. However, on the other hand, such a terrifying undead creature had obvious fear towards Haoyue, and even suppressed its strength because of Haoyue's aura. It was conceivable that Haoyue's ancestors or previous life had left her with many painful memories. Haoyue, how far will you evolve in the future? Looking at Haoyue's 6 big heads and its amethyst-like scales, Long Haochen gently touched it. Haoyue's 6 big heads immediately came over, especially the new earth big head, Goldie, who rubbed against him. In front of Long Haochen, Haoyue's previous coercion was not there at all, and it was still like a child. However, Haoyue's evolution was also very significant for Long Haochen. His internal spiritual power increased by about 3,000, and more importantly, the changes in his external spiritual power. Now that he calmed down, Long Haochen carefully felt it. He found that there seemed to be a powerful force in his blood. This force was very similar to Haoyue's aura, and it should be the layer of purple gold that appeared on his body before. This force was merging with his body, and gradually became a part of his external spiritual power. Due to the blood contract between him and Haoyue, the speed at which Haoyue's power fused with his body was very fast. According to Long Haochen's estimation, the whole process of merging would be completed in less than 10 days. By that time, he himself was not sure how much his external spiritual power would be strengthened. However, the improvement of his external spiritual power would probably be in the tens of thousands. More importantly, the external spiritual power that Haoyue helped him to improve seemed to have something in common with his internal spiritual power. After Haoyue and Long Haochen made out, he crawled on the floor of the Tower of Eternity and fell into a deep sleep. He was obviously very tired. This evolution also consumed a lot of his energy. Long Haochen's companions didn't know what kind of thrill he and Haoyue experienced at the end. After all, they only teleported back for 10 seconds, and Long Haochen and Haoyue teleported back together. How could they know that if it wasn't for Long Haochen's kindness to help Haoyue fight for the last few seconds and stop the Lich King's last attack that might threaten Haoyue, they probably wouldn't have been able to return. Haoyue fell into a deep sleep, and they all came to Long Haochen's side. Hanyu said with some worry, "Leader, Haoyue's evolution seems to be getting more and more difficult. The power of that undead creature just now is comparable to the top 10 demon gods, or even stronger. I'm afraid the opponent we're going to face next time will be even more powerful." Lin Xin said, "The time it takes for Haoyue to evolve is getting longer and longer. Maybe the next evolution will take a few years. When that time comes, don't tell me we won't be able to help him resist strong enemies. Boss is already an 8th rank knight, and in a few years he might even reach the 9th rank." Wang Yuanyuan giggled and said, "I didn't expect you to be such an optimist. Boss, Haoyue has also completed his evolution. Can we go look for Anger now?" Long Houchin nodded slightly and said, "It's time to meet up with them. However, after careful consideration these few days, I've decided that we'll go to the Soul Temple's Myriad Beasts Pass and the Temple of the Priest's Southern Pass and try not to fight. Especially me, I won't participate in the battle against the demons anymore." Hearing what he said, his companions were all stunned. One must know that as demon hunters, their most fundamental task was to fight against the demons. Long Houchin said, "Since I finished my seclusion, I fought against the demons in Dragon Resisting Pass, Exorcist Pass, Gelling Pass, and the Southeast Stronghold. I've performed in almost every stronghold. Moreover, my performance was a bit too outstanding. In Dragon Resisting Pass, because of the Tower of Eternity, I seriously injured the demon god, Samakina. In Exorcist Pass, I helped Xingyu, a great-grandfather, kill the Flaming Lion Demon and Luoxian, and together with Kai, killed the Green Goblin riding Demon God Air. In Jialing Pass, I also relied on light prayer to temporarily resist the demon god Marbus's super forbidden spell, buying time for the defense of Jialing Pass. Here, I once again killed the demon god Godseal. 3 demon gods have died because of me. Demons aren't fools, and my golden foundation armor is too conspicuous. They must have noticed me and even guessed something. Moreover, every time I appear on the battlefield, the number of companions around me increases. I've concealed my appearance, but your appearance is seen by the demons. As long as someone observant analyzes it, the demons can easily guess that I've appeared. If the demon emperor confirms his guess, then he's likely to lead the heaven-defying demon dragon clan, moon devils, and star demons to invade. And this is the last thing I want to see right now. The demons will discover my existence sooner or later, but I hope that it'll be among the demons. This way, we won't implicate the 6 strongholds. Therefore, we should try not to make any more moves and keep a low profile until we meet up with and Sima and sneak into the demons' territory." After listening to Long Houchin's analysis, Zhang Fangfang and Han Yu immediately expressed their support, and the others also understood. That's right, now is not the time to show off. Although they had killed a few fiend celestials, they were relatively low-ranked opponents. Their strength was not considered too terrifying. The demon god crown hasn't escaped, so these demon gods won't appear for the time being. However, as long as their demon god pillars are still there, the position of demon god will be passed down. Therefore, the most important thing for them is to sneak into the demons' territory and destroy the demon god pillars as much as possible. At that time, although they will be extremely majestic in the demons' territory, the Temple League will be more stable. They only have a few people, and no matter how strong the demons are, it won't be easy to find them in such a huge territory. Myriad Beast Pass, Soul Temple. Chan Ing stood there blankly, and her whole person seemed to be a little sluggish. The Soul Saint garment with 108 spiritual pills and countless silver patterns embroidered with demon beasts emitted gentle spiritual power fluctuations. And in front of her sat 2 old men. One of them was her grandmother, Senshui Popo, and the other was even more incredible. He was the current Soul Temple Master, and also Channing, Er's grandfather, the psychic Chen Hongba. That's how it is. You have to restrain your grief. The possibility of his survival is very, very low. No, it can't be. He must still be alive, he must still be alive. Chan Ing suddenly shouted, and tears uncontrollably flowed down her cheeks. She was still holding a letter in her hand, but at that moment, her body was trembling uncontrollably. Her emotions were almost out of control. Senshui Popo sighed and said, "Child, we have been fighting against the demons for so many years and have experienced too many parting of life and death. Think about it. This hatred, we will unceasingly demand it from the demons." "No, grandmother. I want to go find him." Chen Ing suddenly raised her head, and her eyes emitted an extremely resolute light. "Nonsense." Chan Hongba shouted loudly, and his imposing aura immediately intimidated Chen Ing. Are you still a 3-year-old child? Don't tell me you don't know the consequences of looking for him by yourself. The moment you inherited the soul saint garment, your life no longer belonged to you alone. Chun-Ing stubbornly said, I can take off the soul saint garment. Nonsense. Chun Hongba suddenly stood up. His stature couldn't be considered tall, but it had a kind of indescribable grandeur. Apart from being the soul saintess, you are also my Chun Hongba's only granddaughter. Have you ever thought about us? If something happened to you, wouldn't your grandmother and I go crazy? Hearing these words, Chun-Ing, Oi's stubbornness finally softened. She suddenly rushed forward a few steps, threw herself into San Shui Popo's embrace and burst into tears. Looking at his bitterly crying granddaughter, Chun Hongba helplessly shook his head. You little girl, your temper is just too stubborn. You obviously like him, but you just have to pretend to be disdainful. Now you're suffering. While San Shui Popo was comforting her granddaughter, she unhappily glared at Chun Hongba. You still have the nerve to say that? Isn't it just like you old fart? I still remember the way you behaved when you were chasing me at that time. You would rather die than lose face and suffer. The previously overbearing Soul Temple master was helpless in front of his wife and resentfully sat down. After pondering for a moment, he said in a deep voice, We, the Soul Temple, are all summoners. Investigating this kind of thing is the worst. You must remain calm. Grandfather immediately reported to the Holy Alliance and asked the Holy Alliance to dispatch monster hunters to look for him. If possible, rescue him. Chapter 203. Hearing her grandfather's words, Chun-Ing raised her head and said with tears in her eyes, But now the monster hunters are either helping to defend the city or fighting with the demons in the hinterland. How can there be strong enough monster hunters to find him? Moreover, who knows how long it will take for the Holy Alliance to react when you write a letter to them? Chun Hongba smiled bitterly. What can we do? I will write a letter to the Exorcist Mountain Pass and ask them to send some assassins. This was the only way out of desperation. Don't you know how slim the chances of him surviving are? Chun-Ing pouted. Just as she was about to cry again, a respectful voice came from outside. Temple Master, the acting Holy Knight of Knights Templars, is here to pay a visit. Acting Holy Knight? Although Chun Hongba was upset about Chun-Ing's matter, he didn't dare to be negligent when he heard the words acting Holy Knight. Knights Templars was the head of the 6 temples. Although the acting Holy Knight's strength might not be among the best in Knights Templars, his power was definitely among the top, even surpassing some deputy temple masters who didn't have much power. Invite him in, Chun Hongba said immediately. Chun-Ing stopped crying and said to Chun Hongba eagerly, Grandfather, this acting Holy Knight is just in time. Ask him to send a few Holy Knights to help find him. Chun Hongba said in a deep voice, Child, calm down. Isn't Grandfather worried? He is my grandson-in-law. Let me first meet this acting Paladin Chief before we talk. The Holy Knight of Knights Templars has changed. It seems that Han Q will stay with the Holy Alliance. You and your grandmother can wait in the inner room for a while. Chun-Ing answered in a wrong tone and helped her grandmother into the inner room. This was Chun Hongba's office, as well as his and San Shui Popo's residence. The room was very large. Outside was a large living room, and inside was a bedroom and a cultivation room. Soon, sonorous footsteps were heard from outside, and the voice of the person who had reported earlier sounded again. Lord Temple Master, the acting Holy Knight has arrived. Please come in. Chun Hongba's expression had already returned to normal. Along with the sonorous footsteps, a tall and burly knight wearing a fine gold base armor walked in from outside. Chun Hongba was surprised to see that not only was this stand-in Holy Knight dressed in military attire, but he didn't even remove his mask. This was not a battlefield. The battle situation in the Soul Temple was stable. This acting Holy Knight elder actually came to see him dressed like this. It was really impolite. Acting Holy Knight of Knights Templars, Elder Jingjin number 12, greets Temple Master Qin. Because of some inconvenience, I didn't remove my mask. Please forgive me, Temple Master. A clear voice came from within the armor. So young? This was Chun Hongba's first reaction. Before he could speak, a cry of alarm came from inside. It was Chun Inger's voice. In the next moment, along with a fragrant wind, Chun Inger, who was wearing the Soul Saint garment, rushed out from inside like the wind. Even San Shui Popo couldn't stop her. You are. Chun Inger came in front of the knight on a golden pedestal and asked with a trembling voice. Seeing her, the knight on a golden pedestal also became strangely excited. Inger, you are here too. That's great. It saves me the trouble of looking for you. While speaking, the knight on a golden pedestal raised his hand and took off his mask, revealing an extremely young and extremely handsome face. Wasn't it Long Haochen? Chun Inger and Long Haochen had been partners for several years. She was very familiar with his voice. Therefore, when Long Haochen opened his mouth, she recognized it. Only then did she recklessly rush out of the room. Boss. As if she had seen a relative, the moment the word boss came out, Chun Inger threw herself into Long Haochen's embrace and burst into tears. Chun Hongba was dumbstruck as he watched from the side. He didn't understand how this magic trick had changed. Even if this Soul Temple's temple master, a rank 9 psychic with outstanding intelligence, he still couldn't understand the situation in front of him. San Shui Popo also walked out of the room and arrived in front of Chun Hongba. When she saw Long Haochen, her shock wasn't any less than Chun Inger's. She whispered in Chun Hongba's ear, "This young man is Long Haochen. Why is he here?" And he even became the acting Holy Knight leader. Who is Long Haochen? Chun Hongba only felt that this name was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't think of who this name belonged to. San Shui Popo knew Long Haochen during the Monster Hunters trials. The current Long Haochen was a lot taller than before. He also looked a lot more mature and handsome. If it wasn't for Chun Inger calling him boss, she really wouldn't have dared to recognize him. Are you stupid? He's that genius youngster from the Knights Templars. Inger is the leader of their Monster Hunters team, the one who destroyed the snake, demon, god, and Amari, demon god pillar. Hearing San Shui Popo say this, Chun Hongba reacted. So the young man in front of him was the number 1 genius in the history of the Knights Templars, the scion of light, Long Haochen. Long Haochen comforted Chun Inger while apologetically bowing to the 2 elders again. San Shui Popo slowly walked forward. She smiled and nodded to Long Haochen, then pulled Chun Inger out of his embrace. Although Chun Inger and Long Haochen used to be a team of monster hunters, in San Shui Popo's eyes, her granddaughter wasn't the slightest bit inferior to this scion of light. But in San Shui Popo's eyes, her granddaughter wasn't the least bit inferior to this scion of light. What's more, Chun Inger had a fiancé. If she was too close to Long Haochen like this, it wouldn't be good if it was spread out. Boss, you have to save him. Although Chun Inger was pulled away by her grandmother, she still couldn't help but say. Long Haochen stared blankly. At the side, San Shui Popo scolded. You girl, why can't you calm down a bit? This acting Saint Knight leader is here to see your grandfather. Chun Inger looked at Long Haochen with grievance and said, Boss, I'll tell you later. You have to help me. Long Haochen looked at her pretty face covered in tears and couldn't help but feel pain in his heart. He nodded without hesitation. Although Chun Inger was older than him, when they were in the same team, he had always treated Chun Inger as a younger sister. Chun Inger had a straightforward temperament. Although she was the weakest, no matter what kind of danger she faced, she wouldn't be timid. This was the first time Long Haochen had seen her cry so bitterly and lose control of herself. Chun Hongba had been looking at Long Haochen with a slightly puzzled gaze. Now that Chaninger had calmed down, he slowly said, Saint Knight Leader, Inger has been rude. Please don't take offense. Are you the Saint Knight Leader who has just been promoted? Long Houchen naturally understood this psychic's meaning. He immediately took out his command tablet and his grandfather's letter and handed it over. After Chun Hongba read Long Tianing's letter, his face revealed a somewhat regretful expression. He indifferently said, I understand, brother, Tianing's meaning. Saint Knight Leader can stay here with us for the time being. Long Houchen said, Temple Leader Qin, we may not be able to stay here for long. After leaving here, we still have to continue to the Temple of the Priests to rendezvous with our last companion. Chun Hongba's eyes slightly flickered. He said, Saint Knight Leader, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Since your Monster Hunters team has already been disbanded, I don't intend to let Inger rejoin the Monster Hunters team. She must stay in the temple. Ah, Long Houchen was gobsmacked. Chaninger was the same. This was the first time Long Houchen had encountered such a situation since he came out of seclusion and rendezvoused with his companions. Chun Hongba unexpectedly didn't agree to let Chaninger return to the team. Just as Chaninger was about to open her mouth, she was held down by Sanshui Popo. She even used her spiritual power to seal her ability to speak. She could only anxiously look at her grandfather and Long Houchen. Chun Hongba said, Saint Knight Leader can represent the Knights Templars. I won't hide it anymore. Inger's innate internal spiritual power is above 90. She is our Soul Temple's Soul Saintess. Moreover, she is the first genius in the history of the Soul Temple to inherit the Soul Saint garment. Therefore, she must stay in the temple. In the near future, she will inherit my mantle and become the next temple leader of the Soul Temple. Therefore, her identity is rather special. She is no longer suitable to become a demon hunter and take risks. Hearing Chun Hongba's words, Long Houchen was silent. He turned his head to look at Chuning. Although Chaninger was restrained by her grandmother, her anxious eyes already told Long Houchen a lot of things. Long Houchen said, Temple Leader Qin, why don't you listen to Inger's own opinion? If she is unwilling to become a demon hunter, I won't force her. However, you also know that a team of monster hunters is made up of various professions. If we don't have Inger, we won't be a complete monster hunters team. Chun Hongba indifferently said, This is simple. There are many young experts in our Soul Temple. Let Saint Knight Leader choose one. I will report to the Holy Alliance and make an exception to let your team change members. Even Sanshui Popo said that he was stubborn. One could imagine the temper of this temple leader of the Soul Temple. As long as he decided on something, he would rarely change his mind. Long Houchen helplessly looked at Chun Inger. However, he saw that the expression in her eyes had changed even more intensely. She was so anxious that tears had already flowed out. Temple Leader Qin, please reconsider. As the temple leader of the Soul Temple, you have no right to order demon hunters. Chun Hongba's expression froze. Saint Knight Leader, please remember your status. You still don't have the qualifications to speak to me like this. You can leave. Expulsion order. Compared to Magic Temple's temple leader, Li Jingji, this temple leader Chen's attitude towards Long Houchen was much worse. Of course, the most important reason was because of his relationship with Chaninger. Long Houchen frowned slightly and said, No, you are wrong. I believe that I have the qualifications to speak to you. Apart from Saint Knight Leader, I also have the title of Monster Hunters. Chun Hongba blanked. Young man, watch your words. Not everything can be used as a flag. How old are you? What is your cultivation? Why do you have the title of Monster Hunters? The title that Long Houchen mentioned, naturally, meant the top-titled Monster Hunters. That was the supreme glory of Monster Hunters. It was also the highest position among all the Monster Hunters. The leader of the titled Monster Hunters definitely had the same position as the temple leaders of the major temple. Long Houchen said calmly, If I remember correctly, according to the rules of the Alliance, there is a situation where one can obtain the title of Monster Hunters before their cultivation is up to par. This situation means that one has made sufficient contributions to the Alliance. Chan Hongba said coldly, "Are you referring to your destruction of the snake demon god Andamari's demon god pillar?" "That's right. This achievement can indeed give you such an honor. However, the destruction of Andamari's demon god pillar is only your side of the story. The Alliance has yet to verify it. You gave yourself the title of Monster Hunters without authorization. Isn't that a little too arrogant?" Long Haochen shook his head and said, "No, I'm not referring to this contribution. The rules of Monster Hunters do not stipulate that destroying a demon god pillar can obtain a title. However, there is such a rule in the rules of Monster Hunters. If a team of Monster Hunters kills 3 or more demon gods, they are qualified to obtain a title in advance." Qin Hongba was shocked. "You mean you have already killed 3 or more demon gods?" Long Haochen stepped on the ground with his right foot. A golden stream of light flipped, and he took off the golden foundation battle armor on his body. He pulled up his sleeves and revealed the merit token. The record on the merit token can't be false. Temple Leader Qin, you can find someone to check it. We have killed the snake demon god Andamari, the green demon riding demon god Godseal, and the demon god Clausel. Moreover, I was the one who dealt the final blow. Hearing this, Qin Hongba's expression couldn't help but change. The same was true for Sanshui Popo. The process of Long Haochen and the others killing the snake demon god Andamari had been narrated in detail by Channing. However, they didn't expect that Long Haochen would be able to kill 2 demon gods again. Killing Andamari could be said to be a stroke of luck. However, could it be that every time he killed a demon god, it would be a stroke of luck? Moreover, what Long Haochen said was correct. According to the rules of Monster Hunters, they were already qualified to obtain a title. Moreover, they didn't have to go through the evaluation of Monster Hunter's rank. This title would follow them forever. To be able to become a member of a titled rank Monster Hunters, this glory even surpassed the status of the Temple leader. After all, the Temple leader was the ruler and commander, or in other words, the controller. However, a titled rank demon hunter was an absolute hero in the Temple League. Qin Hongba's expression slightly loosened. He subconsciously asked, "Then what is your current title?" Long Haochen said in a deep voice, "When we left the southeast fort, I had already asked Qiu Yonghao of the Warrior Temple to act as a witness and formally apply for a title to the Alliance. In the past, when we were at the Exorcist Mountain Pass, we saw the demon god's fallen monster hunters. At that time, Temple Leader Qin Zidian asked me if I was willing to inherit their title in the future. I refused. A simple demon god of slaughter couldn't bring peace and development to humanity. At that time, my companions and I decided on the future title. This title will be called Light of Dawn." Chapter 204, Glimmer of Dawn. Hearing these 4 words, Qin Hongba couldn't help but be moved. Sanshui Popo's eyes were also filled with astonishment. They could all hear the great ambition contained in Long Haochen's words. Hearing these 4 words, the struggle in Channing Er's eyes also became peaceful. At that time, when Long Haochen mentioned the title of Glimmer of Dawn in front of Qin Zidian, even the members of their own monster hunters only thought of it as a great ambition. They even wanted to use 100 years to accomplish it. However, after a few short years, Long Haochen, who was only 20 years old this year, had already told her that they would soon obtain the title of Glimmer of Dawn. An incomparable sense of glory instantly rose in Channing Er's heart. A gentle, milky, white spiritual power suddenly emitted from her body. She could feel the spiritual power in the air suddenly explode. In the next moment, Chen unexpectedly recovered her ability to move. She rushed to Long Haochen's side in a big stride. "Leader, is what you said true? Can we really obtain a title?" Chen grabbed Long Houchen's arm and shook it with all her strength, although she didn't attach much importance to external things. However, as a monster hunter, her own monster hunters could obtain a title. This kind of glory was so lofty that even Chen Hongbo and San Shui Popo felt a bit jealous. It should be known that in the 6,000 years of human history, the number of monster hunters that could obtain a title didn't exceed 20. Currently, there were only 2 titled monster hunters. Long Houchen faintly smiled and said, "Although our strength is still far from being able to complement the title of titled monster hunters, we are indeed going to obtain a title of our own." "That's great, that's really great. Leader, no matter what, I want to return to the team. I want to fight together with everyone. I must." As she said this, Qining suddenly turned around and faced Qin Hongbo. "Grandpa, you can't stop me. You have no right to stop a demon hunter from returning to his team. Do you know? In the past few years, under the leader's leadership, we have gone through fire and water and made outstanding contributions to the Alliance. In the team, because I couldn't use summoning magic, I was always a burden. However, my companions never expressed any dissatisfaction with me. No matter when, they would always protect me in the safest place, especially the leader. Every time we encounter a strong enemy, the leader is always at the front, enduring the enemy's strongest attacks. And every time this happened, I could only watch helplessly as everyone fought and killed each other, unable to do anything. Now, I was finally a true summoner. I finally had my own power. How could I leave my team at this time? How could I be so selfish? Grandpa, no one can stop me. Not even you, unless you kill me. Otherwise, no matter what, I must return to the team and be with my companions." Chan Ing Ai's words were spoken with sincerity. Tears once again gushed out, but her words were incomparably resolute, leaving no leeway. San Shui Popo's expression clearly hesitated. She was once a demon hunter, so of course she understood how deep the relationship between a demon hunter and his companions was. That was nurtured through countless life and death situations. That kind of friendship was often more important than family affection. Between them, it was unknown how many times they would go all out in order to rescue each other, even risking their lives. At this moment, Qining Er's words sounded like she was weeping and complaining. For a moment, her heart couldn't help but become chaotic. She looked towards Chen Hongbo. Although Chen Hongbo was afraid of his wife, he was after all the Soul Temple's temple master. Looking at Long Houchen and his tearful granddaughter, Chen Hongbo's expression gradually returned to normal. He sternly said to Long Houchen, "I'm very sorry, Saint Knight Elder. I take back my previous words. I didn't apologize to you for the words I said in a moment of excitement. Congratulations on obtaining the title of Light of Dawn. For many years, no matter which of the 6 great temples, all the professionals have sacrificed themselves for the greater good. I don't know how many parents have seen their children step into the battlefield, but in the end, they only returned with their corpses. Even their corpses weren't complete. As the Soul Temple Master, I understand how glorious it is for Ing to be a demon hunter. I shouldn't have stopped her. Yes, in my heart, I definitely have a selfish motive. I only have this one granddaughter. However, I absolutely didn't stop her from returning to the team because of this selfish motive." Speaking till here, Chen Hongbo pointed at the Soul Saint garment on Qining Er's body. "Saint Knight Elder, please take a look. The garment that Ing is wearing right now is called the Soul Saint garment. It is the only artifact of our Soul Temple. On this artifact, there are 108 elixirs inlaid. They were left behind by 108 rank 9 psychics of our Soul Temple for several thousand years. This Soul Saint garment can be said to have taken the efforts of tens of generations of our Soul Temple to finally complete. From the day it was completed until now, the only one who can wear it is Ing because her innate internal spiritual energy is over 90. She has the physique of a soul saint. She is also a God's favored, just like you." Summoners are different from Unite. No matter how powerful a summoner is, his body is still fragile. Our soul temple can't do without Ing. Therefore, I can't let her take any more risks. Give her another 10 years, and she will definitely become the true mainstay of our soul temple. At that time, on the battlefield against the demons, she will be able to play a much greater role than now. Therefore, as the soul temple master, I have to stop her from returning to the team. I hope you can understand. No, Grandpa, you can't stop me. Leader, quickly teleport me away. If that happens, even Grandpa won't be able to find me. Chun Ing shook Long Hao-chen's arm, asking him to teleport her to the Tower of Eternity. However, Long Hao-chen didn't do so because he could understand Chen Hongba's current mood. Wasn't Chen Hongba now just like Yang Haohen and Grandpa Long Tianyin when he finished his closed-door training? At that time, Long Hao-chen had witnessed their struggle. An innate internal spiritual energy of 90 was incomparable to any temple. It meant that an amazing powerhouse, or even a powerhouse that could fight against the demon emperor, was about to be born. With such a powerhouse leading, no matter which temple it was bound to be extremely prosperous. As the temple master, it was understandable that Chen Hongba wanted to keep Qin Ing. Moreover, Chen Hongba was right. No matter what, Chen Ing was a summoner, and he and Kai were also God's favored. However, their survivability was much stronger than Chen Ing's, especially him, who had the Tower of Eternity and could teleport to another space at any time to avoid the enemy's pursuit. Therefore, in the end, Long Tianyin and Shan Yu were relieved to let them form a new team. Ing, calm down. Long Hao-chen patted Qin Ing's shoulder, and she calmed down. However, the way she looked at Grandpa and Grandma was a little vigilant, which made Chen Hongba angry. However, he was also secretly amazed that this young man named Long Hao-chen was quite capable. He knew his granddaughter's temper better than anyone else. Qin Ing's stubborn personality was very similar to his. If she wasn't really subdued, how could she be so obedient? At least when she was by his side, this precious granddaughter of his was not so easy to talk to. Temple Master Qin, I can understand your concerns. However, Ing is a member of our team, and we need her. I can promise you that I will do my best to protect her safety. As a team leader, it is my duty to protect each and every one of my companions. I will do my best to achieve this. As long as I am still alive, I will not let the enemy hurt her. Chen Hongba's face darkened. So you think that your strength is enough? Long Hao-chen said. Temple Master Qin, our team as a whole, at least among monster hunters of the same level, I dare say that our survivability is the strongest. Back then, Senior Chinzidian once gave us an epic tier equipment called the Soul Chain. You should have heard about it from Ing. The Soul Chain has the ability to share life. In other words, it is very difficult for my companions and I to be ambushed and killed by the enemy. We can all share the damage for our companions. Not only that, in our team, almost every member's equipment is at least legendary tier. Currently, we have 2 divine equipment and 4 epic tier equipment. This is not including Ing's Soul Saint garment. In terms of self-defense, I am very confident. The 2 divine equipment he was referring to were his Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield and Kai's Grim Reaper Scythe. The 4 epic tier equipment were Soul Chain, Eternal Melody, Aria of the Goddess of Light, Blue Rain, and Hibiscus of Light. The Tower of Eternity was not within Long Hao-chen's calculations. Apart from teleportation, he really did not want to borrow any power from the Tower of Eternity. Eternal Melody was only used as an epic tier equipment for teleportation. 2 divine equipment and 4 epic tier equipment. Chen Hongba's facial muscles twitched. Our super equipment so worthless? How old are they? For a moment, Chen Hongba actually did not know how to continue refuting Long Hao-chen. Sanshui Granny saw her husband's hesitation and said, "Weapons are after all external objects. Only when you are strong enough can you protect yourself." Although Ing has already broken through to the 7th rank, her abilities are still lacking. Leader Long, how about this? We can allow Ing to return to your team. However, you must guarantee that she cannot enter the demons to carry out missions for a certain period of time. It is best if she stays in the Wanshou Pass. Participating in the Holy War is also a contribution to the Alliance. No. Without waiting for Long Haochen to speak, Qining had already resolutely refused. Grandma, we are already legendary tier monster hunters. You no longer have the power to stop us. I must go with Boss and the others. We will definitely carry out missions. Qian Hongba's eyes flashed, and he said in a deep voice, Fine. You can go, but you must use your strength to prove to me that you have the ability to protect yourself. Qining was startled. She did not expect her grandfather to agree so readily. How do you want to prove it? Qian Hongba said in a deep voice, As long as you and your companions can defeat me, I will admit that you have the ability to protect yourself. That's impossible. Qining immediately understood. Grandfather was trying to save the country in a roundabout way. On the surface, he agreed, but he was using another method to make things difficult for them. Qian Hongba was also one of the old powerhouses of the Temple League. He was a powerful rank 3 psychic. His internal spiritual energy was as high as 300,000. Of course, for Summoner, spiritual energy was not the absolute deciding factor. This was because the Summoner's summons were more important. Spiritual energy was their backup support. Thus, in the Soul Temple, the 6 great temples had the most number of rank 9 powerhouses. However, their overall strength was not the strongest. Summoners usually trained in summoning magic and spiritual energy. They did not have any other skills. Since they focused on spiritual energy, they were naturally stronger in this aspect. To put it simply, if Qian Hongba with 300,000 spiritual energy went up against Long Tianin with 200,000 spiritual energy, he would definitely lose. However, on the battlefield, facing thousands of enemies, Qian Hongba was much more useful than Long Tianin. Qian Hongba blushed and said, If that's the case, then don't mention leaving again. Do you think I don't know what you're planning? If you return to the team, you will immediately go with them to rescue Yang Wenjiao. Yang Wenjiao. Hearing this name, Long Haochen's heart skipped a beat. During the Monster Hunters trials, he, Yang Wenjiao, and Duan Yi were hailed as the 3 greatest hopes of the younger generation of the Knights Templars. However, he had not seen Yang Wenjiao for a long time. Yang Wenjiao was not only Qining Er's fiancé, but also the grandson of the Lord of the Knights Templars, Knight of the Seal Yang Haohen. What's going on? What happened to Yang Wenjiao? Long Haochen hurriedly asked Qining. Hearing this question, Qining Er's eyes suddenly turned red again. He was captured by the demons, and we don't know if he's alive or dead. It turned out that the 2 teams of monster hunters commanded by Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi, after the Holy War began, entered the demons to fight behind the enemy lines. Among the new generation of monster hunters, they were among the best. Overall, the quality of the team members was not much worse than that of Long Haochen and the others. After the continuous magic power in the war with the demons, their strength had greatly improved. In addition, Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi were smart people, meticulous, and capable of commanding. All along, they had been thriving among the demons. They had completed a lot of difficult missions. With the passage of time and the improvement of their actual combat ability, these 2 teams of monster hunters had also become general-level monster hunters after Long Haochen and the others. Although they took different routes, the 4 teams of monster hunters led by Long Haochen, Lu Shi, Yang Wenjiao, and Duan Yi were now all above the general level. Their monster hunters had been established for less than 5 years, which could be said to be a miracle in the history of monster hunters. However, the 2 teams of monster hunters commanded by Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi still had an accident. The Holy War had been going on for almost 2 years, and they had been fighting among the demons. They only returned to the Alliance once a year to replenish their supplies. Not long ago, when they intercepted the demons' transportation team among the demons, their original plan was very thorough, and their tactics were also very complete. Their foolproof mission had met with a Waterloo. The reason was very simple. They were unlucky enough to encounter a demon god. Speaking of which, this also had something to do with Long Houchin. The demon god they encountered was preparing to enter the front lines and then make a detour to the Exorcist Mountain Pass as reinforcements. During the Holy War, the demons were stationed outside the several major human strongholds, and the overall strength of the 8 demon gods outside the Exorcist Mountain Pass was the weakest. The commander was only the demon god of emotion, Sidi. And when Long Houchin and the others were at the Exorcist Mountain Pass, they had successively helped the Exorcist Mountain Pass kill 2 demon gods, and Sidi himself had also suffered serious injuries. In this kind of situation, the demons naturally paid close attention to the Exorcist Mountain Pass, and immediately sent a demon god to follow the transportation team to replenish the strength of the demons in the Exorcist Mountain Pass. And this demon god's ranking was quite high, within the top 24. He was a senior demon's powerhouse. As a result, the 2 teams of monster hunters commanded by Yang Wenjiao and Duan ran into an iron plate. Although this demon god didn't bring his own demon god pillar, his strength was far from what they could contend against. The final result was tragic. The 2 teams of monster hunters were almost completely wiped out. Yang Wenjiao and Duan were seriously injured and captured, and the only one who escaped was the assassin of Duan Yi's team. He came back to report the news. The location of the accident was closest to the 10,000 Beasts Pass, and after this assassin sent the news back, he died from his heavy injuries. How could Chening not be anxious after receiving this news? She panicked for a moment, and this news had just arrived yesterday. Originally, Qin Hongba and Sanshui Popo didn't intend to tell this news to Chening, but she coincidentally discovered it. After listening to Chening narration, Long Houchin's complexion immediately became very unsightly. First of all, they were fellow monster hunters, and for the Knights Templars, Yang Wenjiao and Duan were both rare talents. In the future, they were all talented Knight of the Seal, and they were all talented Knight. Since they were captured, no matter what, Long Houchin had to go and rescue them. Even if they might not succeed with their current strength, he still had to try. Yang Haohen's care for him had always been engraved in Long Houchin's heart. If it wasn't for the support of the Temple Master of the Knights Templars, he might have been sent to the Demon Emperor by the Alliance before the start of the Holy War. Taking a deep breath, Long Houchin looked at Chen Hongba and said in a deep voice, "Senior, I agree with your proposal just now. I'm willing to challenge you with my companions. However, I hope that you can relax your conditions a bit. Facing us juniors, can you at least not use your equipment?" Chen Hongba didn't expect that, after thinking about it, Long Houchin would actually agree to his clearly bullying test. There was no room for negotiation at the moment. However, he couldn't help but admire Long Houchin in his heart. This young man had decided to lead his team to challenge him, which meant that he had made up his mind to rescue Duan Yi and Yang Wenjiao. If it wasn't for his granddaughter, Chen Hongba couldn't wait for a powerful team of monster hunters to do the same. However, since it involved his granddaughter, how could he let Chening take the risk? However, he had already said it, and it was impossible to take it back now. As a temple master, how could he go back on his words? "All right, I won't use my equipment to accept your challenge. The time is up to you. It'll be in the Colosseum of my soul temple." Long Houchin nodded slightly and said, "Temple Master Qin, we haven't seen Ing for a long time. Please allow Ing to reunite with us. At the same time, it'll be convenient for us to plan our strategy." "Yes, sure. However, if you want to leave the past just like that, then you'll be considered unwelcome by the Soul Temple forever. At the same time, I'll activate the power of the temple to stop you." Long Houchin said, "Don't worry, that won't happen." After saying that, he gave Chen Hongba a standard knight salute, put on his mask again, and walked out with Channing. Boss, As soon as they walked out, Channing grabbed Long Houchen's arm again. She couldn't help but burst into tears again. Long Houchen patted her head. Silly girl, why are you crying? Do you think the missions we faced before were easy? Even without you, if I knew that Yang Wenjiao and Duan were captured by the enemy, I would have done my best to rescue them. Calm down first, and we'll take a rest so that we can face your grandfather's test. You're the most familiar with Temple Master Qin, so we need you to explain it to us. Yes. Channing nodded repeatedly. She didn't know why, but after Long Houchen came, the uneasiness and anxiety in her heart had decreased a lot. It was a habit that she had developed when she was with Long Houchen. It seemed that as long as the leader was around, everything would be fine. That sense of security was gradually formed over a long period of time, and it was deeply ingrained in Chen Er's heart. Long Houchen brought her to the place that the Soul Temple had arranged for them to rest. It was natural for them to reunite with their companions, especially between Channing and Wang Yuanyuan. They were good friends and sisters. When they saw each other again, they screamed excitedly. Everyone couldn't help but feel excited. The joy of reuniting was soon diluted by reality. After she calmed down, Chen told them what had happened. After listening to her story, everyone's gaze fell on Long Houchen, waiting for his decision. Long Houchen said, "We have to get past Temple Master Qin. Otherwise, he won't let us take away. Hanyu, I'll have to trouble you to make a trip. Ride the Star King to Southern Guard Pass and find Sima. We have to gather all our strength to win this battle." Hanyu nodded and said, "Okay, I'll go immediately." Long Houchen brought him to an empty space outside and summoned the Star King. After giving him a few instructions, Han Yu rode the Star King and immediately headed south. The distance from Thousand Beast Pass to Southern Guard Pass was not far. Sima Xian had always been the main force of the team. After almost 2 years of training, his cultivation must have improved greatly. With him, Long Houchen's team of Glimmer of Light monster hunters would be reunited, and their strength would be at its peak. In the past, they had always worked together as a team of 7. Without Sima Xian, their overall strength would naturally be weakened. Their morale would be different. Kai. I was supposed to be the fastest, but after Kai lost her memory, Long Houchen couldn't trust her to look for Sima Xian. Han Yu was steady, and the Star King wouldn't be able to fly at full speed. It was naturally the most suitable choice to let him go. When they returned, the Star King could carry both of them at the same time. Both of them had the light attribute, and they could also use their spiritual energy to help the Star King increase its speed. After Han Yu left, Long Houchen returned to the room and said to Chen tell me about your current strength and the various abilities of your ancestor. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will emerge victorious in every battle. Chen looked at Long Houchen worriedly. Boss, do we really have a chance? Grandfather is too strong, I'm afraid. Long Houchen chuckled and said, Give yourself some confidence. We aren't weak now. Moreover, only by fighting against stronger experts will we be able to improve even more. Although there's a huge gap between us and Temple Master Qin, I think as long as we do our best and display enough strength, Temple Master Qin won't really make things difficult for us and won't let us leave. Er's eyes lit up, that's right. Grandfather is an elder after all. If we can withstand his continuous attacks for a certain period of time, perhaps Grandfather will soften. Lin Xan, who was at the side, chuckled and said, let's not talk about anything else. When your grandfather's test is about to begin, you must use your words to force him to not use his domain. As long as he doesn't use his domain, we definitely have a fighting chance. Let me tell you, Boss defeated the 49th ranked Demon God of Insight, Crosser, in a one-on-one duel. Previously, we even used the soul enhancement technique to help Hayue fight against an undead expert with a spiritual energy of over 200,000 during his evolution. If your grandfather doesn't use his equipment, he might not be able to defeat us. Chen Ying was stunned. So you're saying that, boss, this Holy Knight leader is real? Wang Yuan giggled. Of course it's real. Do you think the leader is bragging? He's the acting Holy Knight leader that was officially appointed by the Knights Templars. I reckon that in a few years, our boss will become a Knight of the Seal. Long Haochen smiled bitterly. Don't be too optimistic. Temple Master Qin has a wealth of battle experience and is much stronger than the opponents we've faced in the past. When we face the demons, at least my light element can restrain their dark element to a certain extent. And when we face the undead creatures from Haoyue's world, Haoyue's aura can restrain them. But with Temple Master Qin, we don't have that kind of advantage. Who said we don't? Me. Chen Ying suddenly jumped up and said proudly, You're a summoner who doesn't know how to summon. Don't tell me you're reliable now. Lin Xian said in surprise. Chen Ying said unhappily, Don't be so full of yourself, bro. If you're so good, let's fight one-on-one. I'll beat you up so badly you won't be able to find your way north. Do you believe me? As she said that, she waved her little fist at Lin Xian. With her slender arms, it wasn't very convincing, but everyone couldn't help but laugh. The only one who didn't laugh was Long Haochen. He nodded and said, All right, Ying, if possible, find a training field and fight with Lin Xian. I really want to fight. Boss, that's not good. If I turn Medul into a roasted suckling pig, Ying will be heartbroken. Lin Xian laughed. Long Haochen glanced at him and said, Don't be too happy. We haven't seen each other for 2 years, and your cultivation has increased. Don't tell me Ying hasn't. Ying, can you find a suitable training field? Chen Ying's eyes flickered with a sparkling luster. She glanced at Lin Xian with some ill intentions, nodded, and said, Of course I can find it. With bro medicine, I'll let you know how powerful I am. Lin Xian curled up on the sofa, his whole body trembling. He said in a trembling voice, I'm so scared, I'm so scared. Unreliable beautying. I forgot to tell you. This magician has already learned offensive magic. It's not just fire spells. Chen Ying was stunned. You know offensive magic? Didn't you swear not to learn it? Lin Xian jumped up from the sofa. Times have changed. Let's go. Let me see how much you've improved in these 2 years. Medul Piglet should be able to become a magical beast of the 8th rank, or even the 9th rank. It doesn't matter. You're still not my opponent. Chen Ying curled her lips. Facts speak louder than words. If I don't beat you into a pig's head today, I'll change my surname to yours. Lin Xian grinned. Then what about your Yang Wenjiao? When we save him, he'll find out that his wife has changed her surname to someone else. He'll be so sad. Chen Ying was so angry that she didn't say a word. However, she was in the best mood she had in the past 2 years. She could finally be with her companions again. This feeling was so good. With Chen Ying's status in the Soul Temple, finding a training field couldn't be any easier. She led everyone to a rather spacious training field behind the Soul Temple. After explaining the situation to the administrator, she temporarily commandeered it. Long Haochen and the others watched from the sidelines. Chen Ying, and Lin Xian walked into the training field together. After 2 years, Chen Ying's Medul Piglet had obvious changes. Its body, which was originally more than a foot long, didn't grow bigger. Instead, it had shrunk by about a third. However, it gave everyone a very strange feeling. The piglet's skin had become like jelly. Its entire body gave off a feeling that it was crystal clear, especially its pair of eyes. Its small eyeballs were like 2 resplendent gems. Its body didn't emit any strong aura. However, when it followed beside Chen Ying, it seemed like a part of Chen Ying's body. There was a faint and special aura existing. Lin Xian walked to the other side of the training field and said, Ying, do you want me to give you 10 minutes to chant? Sigh, I really can't bear to turn Medul into a roasted pig. As he said that, he rubbed Medul's chubby body a few times. With a smirk, he pinched its little butt. Medul angrily cried out twice and immediately jumped into Chun-Ing's arms. Medul isn't angry. We'll teach him a good lesson later. Chun-Ing, calm down at this time. She wasn't angered by Lin Xian's shameless behavior. The way she looked at him was a little strange. It was like a queen holding a whip and looking at a slave tied to a pillar. Soon, the distance between the two of them increased. Long Haochen stood on the viewing platform in the distance and said loudly, "Both of you be careful. Don't hurt each other. Let's begin." As soon as Long Haochen's voice came out, the distant Lin Xian's temperament immediately underwent a tremendous change. With a boom, a strong blue flame instantly rose around his body, and his originally playful gaze turned chilly. Fighting with the demons and constantly killing them made him accumulate a strong killing intent. As soon as he entered the state of battle, it was as if he had changed into a different person. He raised his fire crystal staff high. He didn't have the slightest intention of being lenient. As soon as he lifted the staff, 6 blue fireballs flew towards Chun-Ing's direction. Generally speaking, a summoner of the same rank could hardly be a match for a magician. This was because a summoner's summoning magic took a lot longer to chant than a magician's attack magic. This was why Lin Xian said that he wanted to give Chun-Ing time to chant magic. Lin Xian's confidence was reasonable. His heart's flame was much stronger than the average fire magician. Moreover, he had strong control over magic and the ability to cast magic instantly. After the string of 6 fireballs flew out, they immediately scattered in the air, bringing with them 6 dazzling trails of blue flames that surrounded Chun-Ing from 6 directions. With Lin Xian's control over magic, he was completely confident that he could stop his magic when Chun-Ing couldn't resist it. He was indeed very experienced. The more powerful a magician was, the less likely they would use powerful magic. This was because not only would it consume more energy, the chanting time would be longer, and there were more uncertainties. The goal of a powerful magician was to control the battlefield in their own hands. Facing Lin Xian's attack, Chun-Ing acted as if she didn't see it at all. She stood in the same place and gently pointed her right hand at Medul Piglet. Suddenly, a strange milky white light shot out from her finger and fell on Medul's body. This milky white light carried a strange, distorted fluctuation. The moment it came into contact with Medul's body suddenly expanded. He turned into a snow-white giant bear that stood up like a human. Roar! The giant bear let out a roar towards the sky. An icy blue halo suddenly burst out from its body. The icy blue halo suddenly expanded and covered the bear and Chun-Ing. Chun-Ing turned her wrist and took out the crystal ball that she used to use in the past. The sound of chanting could be heard. Poof, 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 poof. A series of explosions were heard. 6 blue flames exploded on the ice shield. A large number of cracks suddenly appeared on the ice shield. However, it was reinforced by the bear's roar again. "You want to block my attack like this? That's too naive." Lin Xian snorted and also chanted a spell. His attack just now was just a test. He wanted to see how Chun-Ing would resist it. However, what made him curious was that Medul didn't eat a magical crystal this time. Instead, he did it directly. It seemed that Chun-Ing had given him some kind of ability. Moreover, from Chun-Ing's calm and composed look, Lin Xian faintly felt a sense of urgency. Chapter 205. At this moment, a door of light opened behind Chun-Ing. Each door of light was 5 meters high and 3 meters wide. The gorgeous door of light shone with a strange brilliance. There were a total of 6 doors, maintaining an arc behind Chun-Ing. Chun-Ing's body slowly floated up from the ground. The 108 elixirs on her soul saint garment exuded a faint milky white halo, which made Chun-Ing look like a fairy. A powerful spiritual fluctuation suddenly bloomed from her side. The terrifying pressure seemed to make the whole trial field become dignified. It really is a bit interesting. Lin Xian was also taken aback, but his incantation did not slow down at all. At this time he had already completed it. He pointed the fire crystal staff forward, and a solid blue flame shot out, once again flying towards Chinning. After the flame flew out, a strange scene played out. It actually gradually condensed in the air, turning into a big blue flaming hand. Compared to the previous fireball, the light of this big flaming hand was not particularly strong. There was even no flame rising from the big hand, but the hand itself was dark blue. When he arrived in front of the ice bear's light barrier, he clenched his hand into a fist and punched the ice barrier. With a bang, the ice shield shattered, turning into countless ice fragments that scattered in all directions. The flaming hand opened again, this time to grab the ice bear that Medul had transformed into. Medul roared again. His strong body suddenly rushed forward, and a strong ice spiritual power erupted, like a storm, rushing towards the big flaming hand. At this time, Lin Xian's strong control over magic showed itself. The big flaming hand swayed in the air, suddenly sank down, and then stretched out its middle finger, stabbing towards Medul's body from below the ice storm. In the stands, Wang Yuan snappily said, "Brother Yu Yao is too wretched. He even dares to bully Medul." Long Haochen smiled and said, "Don't worry, it's not certain who will be the bully. Ing Er's beautiful robe wasn't just for show. The only artifact in the Soul Temple wasn't easy to deal with. Medul had trained in the Tower of Eternity." As the giant flaming hand attacked from below, Medul's ice bear body suddenly made a side flip, and then his body size skyrocketed, actually producing a second transformation. This time, Medul still transformed into the ice element magic, the Frost Earth Dragon. Its thick tail swept out and fiercely bombarded the huge flaming hand. The Ice Earth Dragon could be said to be one of the rarest types of earth dragons. It was a magical beast of the 8th rank. The most powerful Frost Drake King was even a magical beast of the 9th rank. However, they were not real dragons, so they could never evolve to the 10th level. At this time, the Frost Earth Dragon that Medul had transformed into was more than 10 meters long. Its huge tail was like a giant awl, and its sweep was full of power. It was clearly close to the standard of a magical beast of the 9th rank. Previously, Lin Xian's judgment was correct. Medul's current ultimate transformation was to reach the standard of a magical beast of the 9th rank. The giant flaming hand was blocked again, and Lin Xian's attack was already in full swing. Chen Ying, Oi's summoning magic had already made him feel a great threat, and he had to stop her from completing the incantation. Hence, after the flaming hand, balls of solid exploding fireballs flew out one after another, just like on the battlefield, and headed straight for Medul. Medul was indeed strong. Lin Xian's magic control was good, and Medul's resistance was also very strong. The huge body of the Frost Earth Dragon was very flexible under his control. Ice restrains fire. Although Lin Xian's Flame of the Heart was very strong, it would still be restrained by ice. In addition, Medul's spiritual energy seemed to be endless. Not only was his body strong, but he was also constantly releasing ice magic to interfere with Lin Xian's attack. Seeing Medul blocking his offensive magic one after another, the surprise in Lin Xian's eyes became more and more intense. Medul's resistance was very high, and he also had a good grasp of the direction of his magic. No matter how he attacked, no fireball could get past Medul. When he tried to control the fireballs to go around from a distance, he was surprised to find that the light gates were like natural barriers. His fireballs would naturally be extinguished as soon as they got close. Could this be an enhanced version of the Living Soul Gate? Lin Xian's heart suddenly jumped. The Living Soul Gate was a 7th grade summoner's magic, but he had never heard of the ability to summon 6 living soul gates at the same time. Although Lin Xian was just teasing Chen Inger, he was very shrewd. Chen Inger's cultivation had also broken through the 7th grade. In other words, she could control the power of the living soul gate. This is not good. Lin Xian was a little hesitant. It wasn't that he thought he would lose, but in this situation, if he didn't use some powerful magic, he was afraid that it would be difficult to interrupt Chen Inger's magic. However, if he used those powerful magic, would it hurt her? Although he and Chen Inger quarreled fiercely, how could he hurt his partner for the sake of victory? While Lin Xian was hesitating, on the other side, Chen Inger had already completed her incantation. The moment she stopped chanting the last syllable of the incantation, a strange layer of milky white sprinkled down from her body. Chen Inger closed her eyes and slowly raised the crystal ball in her hand above her head. The 6 light gates simultaneously burst forth with intense light, each of them different. Red, blue, yellow, cyan, gold, black. They were actually the colors of the 6 elements. Immediately after, roars sounded from the light gates. Chen Inger's summoned magical beasts began to appear. When this magic was completed, whether it was Long Haochen and the others who were watching the battle, or Lin Xian, they immediately realized that this was not the living soul gate. The living soul gate was of the nature attribute. Even if this magic could be controlled, it could only control the level of the summoned magical beasts. It could not control the number or attributes of the summoned magical beasts. It was completely determined by one's own cultivation. However, Chen Inger's summoner clearly knew the attributes of the summoned magical beasts in advance. Therefore, it was definitely not the living soul gate. It was just a magic that looked like the living soul gate. From each light gate, only one magical beast walked out. However, when all of them walked out, Lin Xian took a deep breath and almost shouted out, "I admit defeat." The 6 magical beasts looked exactly the same. They were all earth dragons. Their bodies were comparable to the frost earth dragon that Medul had conjured. Moreover, they each represented 6 different attributes. Did these 6 types of earth dragons really exist in reality? Even if there were earth dragons of the same attribute, it was impossible for them to look exactly the same. In other words, these 6 earth dragons were actually created by Chen Inger using summoning magic. Lin Xian was a magician. He had heard before that the highest level of a summoner was to summon a magical beast of their own imagination, and then use its abilities to the fullest. At this moment, what Chen Inger had completed seemed to be a similar magic. From the aura of these 6 earth dragons, they should be in the category of level 8 magical beasts. There was still a gap between them and the pinnacle of level 8 magical beasts that Medul had conjured previously. They were only equivalent to the strength of a level 7 human powerhouse. However, Lin Xian himself was also a level 7, although he knew that he was much stronger than an ordinary level 7. Against 6 magical beasts of all 6 elements, his chances of winning were very slim. Moreover, what shocked him even more was that when these 6 earth dragons appeared, they immediately got into formation. They each occupied 6 points, forming a 6-colored magical hexagram. What were they going to do? Were they going to cast a joint spell? Chen Inger did not continue chanting her incantation. She floated in the air, and her pretty face was full of a smirk. Looking at Lin Xian's appearance, he seemed to be harboring malicious intentions. In a flash, Chen Inger had already landed in the middle of the 6 earth dragons. She raised her crystal ball up high and murmured something. The 6 earth dragons raised their heads at the same time and breathed out their elemental breath. The 6-colored light gathered above her crystal ball, forming a 6-colored vortex. Lin Xian cried out in pain from afar. Inger, we're all on the same side. Don't hit my face. At that moment, a 6-colored radiance shot out from Chen Inger's crystal ball like a bolt of lightning. Lin Xian instinctively released an explosive fireball in an attempt to block it. However, his fireball disintegrated the moment it came into contact with the 6-colored light. It did not even have the chance to explode. The six-colored light landed directly on Lin Xan's body. If he was not sure that Chen Inger would not hurt Lin Xan, Long Haochen would have stopped the duel. Lin Tan looked strange after being hit by the six-colored light. His body glowed with 6 different colors, and his skin could no longer be seen. Only the 6 colors were fluctuating. His body was frozen in place like a statue. Go back. Chen Inger waved her hand, and the 6 earth dragons walked back to their respective light doors. The light doors closed and the spell ended. Chen Inger pouted at Medul. How did he bully you just now? Go and bully him back. Medul grinned, and his body changed again. This time he turned into a kangaroo-like magical beast and hopped in front of Lin Xan. What is a kangaroo best at? Boxing. As a result, a certain someone who was extremely arrogant before turned into a tragedy. However, Medul did not embarrass Lin Xan. Although he had beaten him up for 5 minutes, he did not hit his face. Otherwise, he would have beaten him into a pig's head, as Chen Inger had said. Ouch, it hurts. I can't accept this. I can't accept this. The 6-colored light on Lin Xan's body lasted for a full 10 minutes before it gradually dissipated. Once he regained his mobility, he roared angrily. Chen Inger snorted. Come again if you can't accept it. I specialize in dealing with all kinds of dissatisfaction. Long Haochen chuckled. All right. Stop bickering. Lin Xan lost, but Inger, he didn't use his strongest skill because he was afraid of hurting you. Otherwise, he would have been a threat to you. That summoning spell was created by you, right? I've never heard of it. Chen Inger said proudly, yes. I created it, inspired by Haoyue's chaos elemental stripping. I can't use that kind of magic. But I thought, can I use summon beasts to complete the combination spell? I experimented many times and finally succeeded. Those earth dragons just now were my first batch of test subjects. They were all created from magic crystals. I can summon them whenever I need them. The reason why it takes a long time to chant is that the earth dragons I created will evolve. Their disadvantage is that they don't have much fighting instinct. But I refine them into puppet-like summoned beasts. Like Medul, as my strength increases, they will continue to evolve. Chen Inger said it very simply, but the others could not help but be shocked when they heard her words. Those were earth dragons with 6 elemental attributes, created with magic crystals and summoning spells. The difficulty could be imagined. In other words, Chen Inger could not only summon beasts, but also create them. I'm a soul saintess. This is the exclusive ability I have after becoming a god's chosen soul bestowal. If I want to, I can even bestow souls on earth and stones. But the number of souls I can bestow is limited. Casting it consumes my own soul power, so I can't use it too much. The advantage is that the summoned beasts that I bestow with souls will definitely evolve along with my cultivation. After listening to her explanation, everyone was slightly stunned. Chen Inger's ability as a soul saintess was slightly difficult to understand, but thinking about it carefully, they could not help but be shocked, creating beasts and bestowing them with the potential to evolve. Ding! The effect of this ability may not be obvious in the beginning, but as Chen Inger's cultivation level increases, the magical beasts she creates will definitely become stronger and stronger. When she reaches the 9th rank, won't she have a batch of powerful beasts that she can directly use without consuming spiritual power to summon? Moreover, because these beasts were created according to Chen Inger's ideas, the degree of compatibility between them and Chen Inger's control over them were far beyond that of ordinary summoned beasts. 6 magical beasts of the same attributes, mixed magic as a soul saintess, Chen Inger had undoubtedly far surpassed the scope of ordinary summoners. Long Haochen pondered for a moment and said, Inger, can I understand it this way? Your ability as a soul saintess is equivalent to giving you an additional batch of summoned beasts. Chen Inger giggled and said, more or less. I've only awakened for a short period of time, so I'm not proficient in using this ability yet. Using soul bestowal, I can at most control these 6 beasts. Long Houchin said, when you summon them, the chanting speed is a little slow. If this problem can be solved, it will be even more ideal. Also, what if they die in battle? Can you resurrect them? Moreover, even if they are resurrected, can they continue to have the ability to evolve and not evolve again? Long Houchin's question could be said to hit the nail on the head. Although Chen Inger's ability was strong, if it was limited by these aspects, it would require a lot of support in order to be effective in battle. Chen Inger thought for a moment and said, "The chanting time is not a problem. I have a way to shorten the chanting time. Moreover, these little dragons were created by me not too long ago, so their compatibility needs to be further improved. As they evolve and their compatibility with me increases, the chanting speed will sharply decrease. When I'm strong enough in the future, if I want to summon them, it will really be like summoning Medul. However, they really can't die. If they die, then all the previous efforts will be in vain. They can only start all over again. Of course, the creatures that I bestow with my soul, whether or not they were created by me, after being bestowed with the ability will be related to my ability at that time. In other words, the stronger I am, the stronger the beasts that I bestow with my soul will be." Long Houchin smiled faintly and said, "Then you have to work hard. I feel that this ability of yours still has a lot of potential to develop. In the future, it will definitely be more useful than what you see now." Chen Inger said with some pride, "That's for sure. They will definitely be a useful member of our Light of Dawn monster hunters." Long Houchin said, "Since we've come to this training field, let's practice our tactics so that we can take your grandfather's test tomorrow." Although the teammates in the team had absolute trust in each other, and they also had a tacit understanding that had been cultivated in the past. Although the teammates in the team had absolute trust in each other and had developed a tacit understanding from before, after 2 years of training, everyone's strength had increased to different degrees. Moreover, with the addition of Zhang Fangfang, they still needed to practice with each other in order to display their strongest strength. Yes, Chen Inger nodded, and the proud smile on her pretty face disappeared. A faint trace of sadness quietly flashed in her eyes. Long Houchin was very observant. Seeing this, he comforted her and said, "Don't worry, the heavens will help the worthy. They will be fine." Chen Inger flattened her red lips and said, "But they have been captured for so long. Will they really be fine?" Lin Xian came over and said, "Haven't you always been against Yang Wenjiao? Why is he more anxious than anyone else after being captured?" Surprisingly, Chen Inger did not argue with him. She raised her head slightly and looked into the distance, murmuring, "I've known him since I was very young. He was a few years older than me. At that time we were living in the holy city and could see each other often. I called him Brother Wenjiao, and he called me Ing-er. When not cultivating, he would always bring me out to play and eat delicious food. If anyone dared to bully me, he would always stand up for me and beat the other party until they looked like pigs. He treated me better than my own brother. I was still young then, so I said, 'Brother Wenjiao, I will marry you when I grow up.' He said, 'Okay, then I will wait for you to grow up.' Who knew that the adults would hear us children's words? Brother Wenjiao's grandfather then proposed to my grandfather. My grandfather was also very happy and agreed, and so we got married. Later, as I grew older, the time I spent cultivating increased, and the opportunities for us to meet became less and less. He became more and more stable, and also more and more powerful, while I, because of my own reasons, could not even use a summoning spell. At that time, my grandfather also did not tell me the secret of the Soul Saintess. I always thought that I would not be able to become a powerful summoner, so I felt especially inferior. Once he brought me out to play, and we met a few fellows from the warrior temple who spoke rudely. At that time, we were still very young. Although Brother Wenjiao's strength was already very good, he still could not defeat those few youths who were much older than us. In the end, he was beaten up. At that time, I saw the deep unwillingness in his eyes. At that time, I was still young, so I said, 'Brother Wenjiao, don't be sad. Wait for me to grow up. I will definitely protect you.' At that time, he turned his head and looked at me with a very strange expression. I will never forget that look of contempt. I asked him, "Why are you looking at me like that?" He said, "You can't possibly protect me. Only I can protect you. Although I lost today, I will definitely not lose in the future." I asked him, "Why can't I protect him?" He just smiled and did not say anything. It was at that time that I was very, very sad. Perhaps you guys think that it is nothing, but to me it was an extremely heavy blow. Apart from my family, he was the closest person to me and the person I cared about the most. And that was also the moment when I felt the most inferior. His contempt, his wordless mockery, pierced me to the core. From then on, I never ignored him. After listening to Chin Inger's story, the crowd could not help but feel a bit of pity. As the granddaughter of the Lord of the Soul Temple, Chin Inger could not even use a summoning spell. One could imagine the pressure she was under. Perhaps what Yang Wenjiao did was nothing, and he did not have any evil intentions, but in that kind of situation, at that kind of time, his behavior caused great harm to Chin Inger. Lin Xan said, "Hurt my pride? Then, since you ignored him, why are you still so anxious now?" Chin Inger said unhappily, "Do you think everyone is as heartless as you? I ignored him, but it does not mean that I do not have him in my heart. I have always been paying attention to his situation, and I swore that unless one day I can defeat him, I will not marry him, and let him wait until his hair turns white." Humph. Lin Xian's body trembled. A woman's anger is really scary. "But I reckon that he may not be able to defeat you now." Chin Inger's eyes turned red, and she said tearfully, "But I don't even know whether he is still alive or not. What difference does it make if I can defeat him or not?" Wang Yuan said, "Silly girl, you are really stubborn. Just such a small matter, and you bear a grudge for so long. No wonder you ignored him, and even refused to join his monster hunters. You are really good. Don't worry, we will do our best to find him, and fulfill your wish of defeating him." Chin Inger choked with sobs. I don't want to defeat him now. As long as he is still alive, I will forgive him, and I will not bear a grudge anymore. But I don't even know where he is now. Is he still alive?" Long Haochin hesitated for a moment, then said, "Inger, is there anyone from you, Yi Chamber of Commerce in Wanshou Pass?" Hearing his question, Chin Inger's eyes suddenly lit up. "Yes, we can ask them for clues. Yi Chamber of Commerce has them, and they are now the largest free merchants. I will go find them now." Saying this, she was about to run out. Long Haochin hurriedly pulled her back, saying, "Inger, don't lose your sense of propriety. How about this? We first practice our tactics. Then I will accompany you to Yi Chamber of Commerce. With the token Yi gave me, I should be able to get their help. We need to at least know the current situation of Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi before we move. At the same time, while waiting for news, we can pass your grandfather's test. By the way, before you and Lin Xian fought just now, you said that you have a way to restrain your grandfather's domain?" Chin Inger nodded, saying, "Almost all of us summoners' domains exist to strengthen our summoned beasts. Almost all high-level summoners have their own original summoned beasts. Therefore, the enhancement of the domain is either to strengthen the original summoned beast to the highest strength, or to strengthen all the summoned beasts. My grandfather's domain is the former, mainly to strengthen his original summoned beast. There is another way to use my soul bestowal, and that is to use it on hostile magical beasts. It will produce a strong weakening effect in a short period of time, making it easier for me to subdue them. Grandfather's strength is much stronger than mine. Even with the Soul Saint garment, I can't weaken his original summoned beast too much, but I can greatly offset the enhancement of the domain." Long Haochin suddenly said, "So that's how it is. The ability of your Soul Saintess is really practical." Chin Inger said, "We summoners believe in the beast god. Legend has it that the rank of the beast god can't be compared to the elemental god. so it is very difficult for a miracle to happen. The Soul Saintess is a magical beast guide sent to the human world by the beast god. So, basically, the ability of the Soul Saintess is directly aimed at magical beasts. With our current cultivation, the enhancement is very good, but if we become stronger, the enhancement will not be as obvious as it is now. Wang Yuan asked curiously, Inger, what is your grandfather's original summoned beast? I feel that with a little traitor like you, our chances of winning are very high. Chen Inger snorted and said, How can it be so easy? My grandfather is the person who understands magical beasts the best in the world. As a psychic, I have never seen his limits. Think about it, it has been so long since the start of the Holy War, and our myriad beasts pass is impregnable. The number of beasts we summon is even greater than the demons. Even the 8 demon gods outside couldn't force grandfather to use his strongest power, so it will be very difficult for us to defeat him. We can only do our best to stall for time. The biggest weakness of us summoners is that our ability to kill in one blow is very weak. As long as we can stall for enough time, it will be enough to prove to grandfather that we have enough strength. I will do my best to stall grandfather's summoned beast. Sister Xingxuan likes me the most, so she won't be ruthless. Sister Xingxuan, Lin Xan asked doubtfully, Is your grandfather's summoned beast a humanoid magical beast? Chen Inger smiled mysteriously and said, Of course not. But Sister Xingxuan is a girl. You can't hurt her when the time comes. Let me tell you, the next day, early in the morning, Long Haochen and the others came to the Soul Temple and looked up at the sky, waiting quietly. According to the time, they should be back by now, Long Haochen murmured. They were all waiting for Han Yu and Sima Xian to return. Long Haochen had a good understanding of Star King's flying speed. The distance from the 10,000 Beast Pass to the Southern Pass was not far, and it had already been a day and a night. If Han Yu could successfully pick up Sima Xian, he should be back by now. Yesterday, Chen Inger and her grandfather had agreed to have a match at noon today. Based on her understanding of grandfather, Chun Hongba had a strong sense of time. If they were late, grandfather's impression of them would be greatly reduced, and the test would be more difficult. If not for the fact that they were pressed for time to rescue Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi, they could have calmly waited for Sima Xian and Han Yu to return, and then calmly made arrangements. But time waits for no man. If they set off later, Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi would be in greater danger. Long Haochen had already contacted the Yi Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber of Commerce had agreed to help them investigate Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi's situation. The Yi Chamber of Commerce had its own communication method, and it should not take long for them to receive news. At the same time, Long Haochen also heard from the Yi Chamber of Commerce that after a Bao led the demons to besiege them. Yi immediately proposed to cancel the engagement when she returned to the demons. Even the Moon Demon couldn't change her mind. Her reason was very simple. How could a man who would try to kill her, who valued his enemy more than himself, become her husband? Perhaps, as the crown prince of the demons, Bao was right, but Yu Yi was not willing to marry such a husband, even if she had to be killed. Regarding this matter, the demon emperor did not express his opinion, and even Bao was silent. After all, there was a reason for this, and Bao was not in the right. Therefore, in the end, although the engagement was not cancelled, it was delayed indefinitely. It was said that Bao had gone into seclusion again. He was training with all his might to improve his strength. This news was just an interlude, so Long Haochen did not pay much attention to it. However, he did not know that because of this matter, Bao's hatred towards him had increased. As the crown prince of the heaven-defying demon dragon clan, Bao had put in even more effort than Long Haochen. In the near future, Bao, who was like a fated opponent, would definitely try his best to find Long Haochen's whereabouts after he came out of seclusion. If he doesn't come back soon, we won't have time to rest. Chen Inger was also very anxious. If Sima Xian and Han Yu could rush back at this time, they could still rest. and at the same time have time to discuss strategies and tactics. However, as time ticked by, they were still nowhere to be seen. Long Houchin took a deep breath, turned to his companions, and said, "Everyone, be prepared to fight against Temple Master Chin without the two of them. This assessment cannot be delayed, and we must persevere." Yes. Everyone nodded at the same time, including Zhang Fangfang. After becoming a member of the Light of Dawn, Zhang Fangfang consciously set his position. The position he gave himself was very simple: Wang Yuanyuan's subordinate. Usually he would not make any suggestions or opinions, and would do whatever Long Houchin told him to. Moreover, he was in a good mood recently, ever since Long Houchin brought Kair and the others to meet up with Wang Yuanyuan. Wang Yuanyuan seemed to have been reborn. She was full of energy, and even her attitude towards him was much better. It could be said that she had officially acknowledged their relationship. To Zhang Fangfang, the death of his original Monster Hunter's companions was a huge blow to him. Now that he could integrate into Wang Yuanyuan's Monster Hunters, it was like his wish had been fulfilled, and he could also accompany Wang Yuanyuan. He was very satisfied. At this moment, suddenly, Long Houchin raised his eyebrows and turned to look at the distant sky. The sky was empty, and there were no clouds in the blue sky. Just as everyone was wondering what Long Houchin was looking at, a small golden that appeared in the distant sky, and it was enlarging in everyone's eyes at an alarming speed. Wasn't it the return of the Star King? There were two people sitting on the broad back of the Star King. The one in front was Hanyu, but he could not block the imposing figure behind him. A big bald head appeared from the back of Hanyu's head, shining under the sun. It was no weaker than the light emitted by the Star King. "They're here, they're here. They're really here." Lin Xian jumped up excitedly. The return of Sima Xian meant that all the members of the general class Monster Hunt 64 had finally reunited. It also meant that the Monster Hunters were all complete. Only then would they be the true Light of Dawn Monster Hunters. Even if one person was missing, it would not be complete. In the past, Lin Xian would often quarrel with Sima Xian, but in reality, the two of them were very close. When he saw the bald man again, Lin Xian could not suppress the emotions in his heart. He could not help but jump up and down and wave at the sky. Long Houchin's handsome face was also slightly red from excitement. He clenched his fists tightly. "They're back. Sima and Hanyu are back. We're finally one again." At this moment, he felt that no matter what difficulties they faced, they would definitely break through. The Star King's speed was too fast. In order to rush back in time, he had been flying at full speed. As a result, when it landed on the ground, even with its cultivation, it staggered and a faint golden mist of steam rose from its body. Sima Xian was the first to jump down from the Star King's back. He laughed heartily and rushed towards everyone with his arms wide open. Hanyu followed closely behind. At this moment, all the members of the Bright Glimmer of Dawn Demon Hunt Squad were extremely excited. Except for Kair, who was slightly emotional, the others could not help but rush forward in cheers and hug each other tightly. They were reunited. They were finally reunited. Whether it was the General Grade number 64 or the Light of Dawn, they were finally whole again. Zhang Fangfang stood at the side and looked at them. His eyes were filled with deep envy. Recalling his comrades who died in battle, he could not help but tear up. For the Alliance, for mankind, countless demon hunters had fallen on the battlefield with the demons. It had been 6,000 years. When would mankind be able to truly drive away the demons? Lin Xian punched Sima Xian hard. "Why are you guys so slow? We were so anxious." Before Sima Xian could speak, Hanyu could not help but say, "Slow? This is slow. The Star King is about to be exhausted. The Star King has been flying at full speed. He has reached his limit. If you want to say it's slow, it's Sima's problem. It's not like you guys don't know how much this guy weighs. If it was a normal flight, the Star King can easily carry the two of us. But in the case of rapid flight with his increased weight, his speed will naturally be affected. Chapter 206. Han Yu placed a hand on Sima Xian's shoulder and continued. Also, on the way back, Sima has been chattering nonstop, asking this and that. The Star King is already very resilient not to be annoyed to death by him. Hearing him say this, everyone burst into laughter. Long Haochen walked to the Star King's side and placed a hand on its back, injecting a rich light element into the exhausted Star King's body. It's been hard on you, Star King. The Star King lifted its head slightly, rubbing its horn against Long Haochen's hand as it looked at him with a warm gaze. Ever since it followed Long Haochen, the Star King had definitely gained more than it had given. It truly admired Long Haochen from the bottom of its heart. It was now completely certain that if it continued to stay by Long Haochen's side, under the influence of the pure light element, it would definitely evolve into a holy unicorn. A faint light flickered, and Long Haochen's eyes revealed a warm smile. You rest first. The Star King nodded, and with a flash of light, it turned into a ray of starlight and disappeared. Didn't you say you wanted to test us? Where do we start? Let's go, I'm coming. Sima Xian shouted loudly. The thick fighting spirit that emanated from his body made everyone's blood boil. Lin Xan laughed heartily. You're still the same. You haven't changed at all. The competition starts at noon. Why are you in such a hurry? Don't letting Er's grandfather slap you to death when the time comes. Sima Xian snorted. There's Brother Yao. If you're not convinced, let's have a match first. Let me tell you, I've already broken through to level 7, level 3. What about you? Don't tell me you haven't broken through yet. Lin Xan said disdainfully. Only level 3? You still have the nerve to show off? I'm already level 5 of level 7. In terms of talent, you're still lacking. You're already level 5? I don't believe you. Sima Xian was unconvinced. Long Haochen laughed and said, Everyone is finally reunited. Before the competition starts, let's familiarize ourselves with each other's cultivation. It was also more convenient for them to work together. Just tell me your level. Lin Xian and Sima Xian had already spoken. Han Yu said, I'm also at the 7th level, 5th level. All along, his cultivation had been second only to Long Haochen and Ker. However, Lin Xian was stimulated by Lin Xan in addition to his own strong innate talent and the attraction of the heart of flame towards the fire element, which was why he was able to catch up. I'm also at 7th order level 5. This time, it was Wang Yuanyuan who spoke. Her cultivation base, which was originally lagging behind, had been completely raised during the desperate slaughter. Hearing them report their levels one by one, Sima Xian couldn't help but widen his eyes. It can't be I'm the weakest now. What about you? He naturally wouldn't place his hopes on Long Haochen and Kai, or being weaker than him. When Channing heard his question, she immediately frowned. Baldy, what do you mean, what? Do you think I'm definitely weaker than you? Let me tell you, I'm also at 7th order level 4, just a little stronger than you. Moreover, I just beat up Brother Yao. If you're not convinced, you can also try. Although she said so, her eyes were full of smiles. Sima Xian's face was gloomy as he said, No way. I've already worked very hard. Don't be like this. I don't want to be last. Lin Xan pretended to comfort him and said, All right, don't be depressed. Ordinary people can't be compared to geniuses. Don't tell me you still don't understand this logic? Biffed. Levels don't mean everything. Leader, deputy leader, what about you guys? Kai, I said. I'm at 7th order, level 6 now. Her speed of spiritual power wasn't faster than her companions, mainly because of the impact of losing her memory. As a god's oracle, she could have improved faster, but in the past 2 years, she had spent most of her time recovering her previous abilities under the guidance of the Holy Moon, especially her understanding of the assassin's abilities. It could be said that the current Kai had a feeling of being well prepared. It was equivalent to learning the assassin's abilities again. Moreover, There was something suppressed in her heart. If she couldn't recover her memory, it would affect her future training even more. On the other hand, if she could recover her memory, then she would definitely have an explosive growth. Long Houchin said, I didn't calculate my level because I haven't evaluated my spiritual power for a long time. My current spiritual power should be around 40,000, less than 50,000. It seemed to be around the 3rd level of the 8th grade. I'll test it when I have time in the future. When the words 8th order level 3 came out, everyone's eyes were a little dazed. Although they also knew that Long Houchin, who was wearing the golden foundation armor, must have broken through 8th order. From what he said, his internal spiritual power was clearly close to 50,000. This gap was too big. Apart from him, the strongest among them, Kai-Er's spiritual power was currently less than 20,000. In other words, Long Houchin's spiritual power alone was equivalent to 2 or 3 of them combined. Moreover, this couldn't be calculated with simple addition and subtraction. Perhaps if they joined forces, they could defeat Long Houchin. But if Long Houchin wanted to withdraw from the battle, they might not be able to stop him. Sima Xian listened to Long Houchin's words. The gloominess on his face was swept away. Haha, although my spiritual power is the weakest, the gap between everyone and boss is so big, I'm mentally balanced. But boss, can you not be like this? You will hurt our confidence. Long Houchin chuckled. Actually, my spiritual power now isn't completely self-cultivated. A lot of it is due to luck. In reality, it was like this after he broke through to 8th order not long ago. His spiritual power increased so quickly, other than his own talent and the opening of many spiritual apertures. More importantly, when the Tower of Eternity swallowed Samakina's domain, it gave him feedback, and later when Halyua evolved, it gave him a boost. Almost 10,000 spiritual power was obtained this way. Chen Anger said, Boss, I saw that Star King was very tired just now. Will he be able to participate later? Long Houchin shook his head. Star King won't be participating later. As a knight, I can't bring my 2 mounts to participate. Chuning, Oi's sparkling eyes immediately revealed a look of surprise. You mean you want Halyua to participate? Long Houchin nodded. After listening to you talk about your grandfather's summoned beast, I have a feeling that Halyua will have a certain restraining effect on it. Moreover, there is nothing to hide in front of your grandfather. Didn't Temple Master Qin promise us that there will be no spectators other than your grandmother and Brother Zhang? In order to truly gain Chen Hongbao's approval, after discussing with Zhang Fangfang, Long Houchin decided not to let him participate in this battle. Otherwise, it would seem a little too stingy. Long Houchin and the other monster hunters already had Hanyu as their retainer knight. But if Zhang Fangfang was added, it would become 3 knight, which was a little too many. Long Houchin said with a straight face, After we pass this test, we will have a good chat about what happened in the past 2 years. Now, everyone, cultivate yourselves so that we can maintain our best condition for Temple Master Chen's test. Yes, everyone simultaneously puffed out their chests and replied loudly. 2 hours later, Wanshou Pass, Soul Temple Coliseum. The so-called Coliseum was actually a name for the trial grounds. Moreover, it would only appear in the Soul Temple. Because the people in the Soul Temple were all summoners, during the process of the trial, there would often be situations where the summoned beasts went out of control. Therefore, the trial grounds here were obviously different from the other major temples. First, it was the size of the trial grounds. The Colosseum in the Soul Temple was almost the largest trial grounds other than the Sanctuary Alliance's trial grounds. The entire Colosseum was circular, and it was surrounded by high platforms that were 10 feet high. The stands surrounded the periphery. The walls of the high platforms were all protected by magical arrays. It was completely targeted at demonic beasts. As long as it was a demonic beast that entered the Colosseum, unless it was released by the staff, it would not be able to rush out. It was the same even for a level 10 demonic beast, which was equivalent to a level 9 human powerhouse. From this, it could be seen how shocking the defense of the Colosseum was. Chun Hongba naturally had a reason for choosing this place to test Long Haochen and the rest. If it was a smaller trial ground, he was afraid that there would be danger. Only the defense here could allow him to unleash his full strength, and there would be no leakage of spiritual energy. There were only 2 entrances in the Colosseum, and they stood opposite each other. At this moment, the entrances on both sides were open. From the eastern entrance, Chun Hongba slowly walked in. Today he was wearing a white summoner's robe, and he looked refreshed. Due to the words of Long Haochen and the rest that day, Chun Hongba had already promised them that he would not use any equipment in today's test. However, he insisted on using his domain. Although he was the sole temple master, Chun Hongba did not underestimate Long Haochen and the rest. On the contrary, he almost treated Long Haochen and the rest as equals. Although these children were young, they had created miracles more than once, especially Long Haochen. He was able to make the entire alliance go to war with the demon race for him. It could be seen how important he was to the Temple Alliance. At such a young age, he had already assumed the heavy responsibility of being the acting Holy Knight of the Knights Templars. This was not something an ordinary person could do. Moreover, he had personally admitted that he had killed 3 demon gods and defeated the snake demon god Andamari's demon god pillar. Was this something an ordinary person could do? Moreover, in Long Haochen's team, Long Haochen was not the only genius. Take his own granddaughter, for example. Chen Ying's blessed body had awakened, and she had officially become the soul saint. As the messenger of the beast deity, one could imagine how much she could restrain summoners. If he still did not use his domain, he might really fail in the hands of these little fellows. He could not afford to lose face. Moreover, Chun Hongba's main purpose was to stop Chen Ying from taking risks. He also believed that if other temple masters were here, they would also stop them if they heard that they were going deep into the demon's territory. Therefore, Chun Hongba was prepared to teach these young people a lesson today so that they would be able to settle down and cultivate properly. He was not prepared to show any mercy, and he was determined to defeat Long Haochen and the rest and make Chen Ying stay. As for Yang Wenjiao's safety, he could only wait for the alliance to send experts to rescue him. Compared to his granddaughter, his grandson-in-law's position was much lower in his heart. At this moment, just opposite Chun Hongba, at the entrance of the great beast-fighting arena on the west side, with Long Haochen in the lead, the Glimmer of Dawn Monster Hunters group of 7 slowly walked in. They were not late at all. On the great beast-fighting arena's viewing platform, Sanchue Popo was already sitting there calmly. She understood her husband's strength very well, and she did not think that these little fellows who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth had any chance. Zhang Fangfang sat beside Sanchue Popo, his eyes focused on the situation below. Although he did not think that Long Haochen and the rest had a chance, he was still secretly praying in his heart, hoping that they could persevere for a while longer. A faint light flickered, and Long Haochen's eyes revealed a strong luster. "Is everyone ready?" "Han, you took the lead to take a step forward." "Leader, Guardian Knight Han Yu reporting for duty." Sima Xian followed closely behind. "Leader, Disciplinary Priest Sima Xian reporting for duty." Next was Lin Xan. "Leader, Fire Mage Lin Xian reporting for duty." Qining Leader, Summoner Qining reporting for duty. Wang Yuan forcefully knocked on the armor on her body. At this moment, her eyes were already slightly red. "Leader, Warrior Wang Yuan reporting for duty." The last one was Kair. Even though she had lost her memories of the past, she could still hear her companions calling her captain loudly one after another. She only felt that the originally ice-cold blood in her body was about to boil. She loudly said, "Leader, Assassin Kai reporting for duty." "Good, let us accept the test." Long Haochen used a sonorous and forceful voice to respond to his companions. At the same time, he extended his right hand. One hand after another was placed on top of each other, When the 7 people and 7 hands were all stacked on top of each other, an intense belief mixed with a monstrous fighting spirit instantly burst forth in the Colosseum. One could faintly feel that the bodies of Long Houchin and the rest were emitting a layer of faint golden light. This was the light that originated from the soul chains. When the 7 of them were of one mind, the effect of the soul chains would definitely be released to its greatest extent. Not only did they share their lives, but they also faintly felt a kind of telepathic connection between them. In the past 2 years, their strength had increased, and at the same time their ability to use their equipment had also improved. At this moment, when all of them stood together and looked at each other's persistent eyes, every member of the bright glimmer of dawn monster hunters had already forgotten who their opponents were. Right now, there was only one belief in their hearts. No matter how strong their enemies were, they would never be able to stop them from advancing. Chun Hongba, who was standing opposite them, felt it the most. When Long Houchin led his companions into the Colosseum, Chun Hongba faintly sensed the solemn aura that was released from their bodies. The calmness that didn't match their age at all had already surprised the temple master of the Soul Temple. However, what happened next made Chun Hongba unable to suppress his astonishment, and his eyes were filled with deep admiration. The members of the bright glimmer of dawn monster hunters expressed their determination by saying that they were reporting to Long Houchin. Every time one more person spoke, their overall momentum would increase by a notch. When all 7 of them had finished speaking, the entire team's imposing manner had already become one. The powerful pressure mixed with dense killing intent and tyrannical fighting spirit had already raised their spirit, chi and spirit to the extreme. Under these circumstances, they would definitely be able to erupt with 120% of their respective strength on the battlefield. No wonder Long Houchin was so confident. No wonder they were able to kill a few demon gods in succession and obtain the title of Bright Glimmer of Dawn. This was indeed reasonable. At this moment, Chun Hongba even somewhat doubted whether his decision was wrong. He saw with his own eyes the change in Channing Er's eyes when she was together with her companions. They were filled with vitality, and were filled with persistence and vitality. This was something that would never appear during her usual cultivation. At this moment, Channing was no longer like a child, but a demon hunter who was truly fighting against the demons. Even Chun Hongba felt that he didn't recognize her. In the stands, Sanchue Popo also revealed an expression of shock. These children are really outstanding. They can actually use this kind of method to raise their morale. Zhang Fongfong faintly smiled and said, "Senior, their excellence isn't limited to just this. You'll be able to personally witness it very soon. I have confidence in them. Captain Long would never do something he wasn't sure of." Sanchue Popo somewhat doubtfully said, "Don't tell me you think they can defeat my family's old man? Do you know my old man's strength?" Zhang Fongfong shook his head and said, "I don't know what level Palace Head Chen's strength has reached, but I can be sure that Long Houchin and the others won't easily lose this competition. This is Long Houchin's promise to Lady Ying, as well as their entire team's promise. I believe their strength will definitely rise under Long Houchin's command." Sanchue Popo calmly smiled and said, "Good, then let us wait and see." Now, even she was somewhat looking forward to this competition. She also wanted to see how big of a surprise these children could bring, and what kind of miracles they could display. Chun Hongba waved his hand, and no one knew what mechanism he triggered. But the 2 doors of the Colosseum simultaneously closed. Suddenly, the entire great beast-fighting arena was filled with a solemn atmosphere. Long Houchin led his companions forward, and respectfully said, "Greetings, Palace Head Chin. I'm very honored to accept your test." Chun Hongba indifferently said, "No need to be honored. This was originally a deal. As long as you can defeat me, whatever Ying decides in the future will be up to her. Conversely, I hope you won't give me any trouble in the future. Do you understand?" Long Houchin faintly nodded, Senior, can we begin? Chun Hongba said, according to the agreement, I won't use any equipment in this test. However, you must be careful. I will use all my strength and definitely won't be lenient just because you are young. Good. Senior, please. Chun Hongba calmly smiled and said, You go ahead. While speaking, a peculiar temperament was already released from his body. As the Soul Temple Lord, a psychic, even if he was a summoner, he still wouldn't take the initiative to attack. Senior, please advise us. Long Haochen loudly shouted. His right foot quickly stepped forward. The tip of his foot pushed off the ground, and his figure dashed forward. Just when Chun Hongba thought he was going to launch an attack with speed, he stopped after dashing forward for 5 meters. The companions beside him also quickly responded and got into formation. Long Haochen was in front. In his left hand was the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield, and in his right hand was the aria of the Goddess of Light, which was also shining with an orange radiance. Slightly behind him on his left was Wang Yuan, who was holding the Divine Soul Shield and Bloody Storm in her hands. On his right was Sima Xian, who was holding the huge metal ball, vigorous ball of light. The three of them were like a barrier, blocking their teammates behind them. Lin Xian was behind Long Haochen, holding the fire crystal staff in his hand, and the fire dragon wings on his back were stretched out. Behind them was the reincarnation saint Qining. Han Yu was still at the back, his evil eye lord floating behind his head, its huge eyes wide open, and its surroundings emitted slightly distorted spiritual waves. As for Kai, she quietly disappeared into the air the moment their figures changed positions. Invisibility, the diamond-shaped battle formation, which integrated attack and defense, and the invisible assassin, was undoubtedly the best formation for monster hunters. They also perfectly used the advantage of having an extra guardian knight as compared to ordinary monster hunters. Chun Hongba couldn't help but secretly nod when he saw this. These young people didn't immediately launch a surprise attack just because he was a summoner. Instead, they were very stable in their formation. This calmness was beyond their age. In fact, Chun Hongba was already prepared for the attack of the assassin or the knight. The first to attack was naturally the team's main attacker, the mage. Lin Xian raised the fire crystal staff high, and a blue explosive fireball flew toward Chun Hongba. Even though Chun Hongba was extremely powerful, he was still shocked when he saw the blue fireball all of a sudden. It was obvious that this thing was not formed by ordinary flames. From the distortion of the air around the flame, its high temperature could be seen. Buzz! The air around Chun Hongba produced a slight buzzing sound. Then 6 crystal balls appeared around his body at the same time. His whole body was shrouded in a layer of strange white light. This was not a weapon or equipment, but an entity condensed by spiritual power. In other words, this was the reflection of a rank 9 powerhouses elixir. Mages and close combat powerhouses were completely different when they used their spiritual power at the same 9th grade professions. After mages condensed their elixir, they used it to enhance their magic, making their magic more powerful and consuming less spiritual power. On the other hand, close combat powerhouses used elixirs to condense the Lingang and control the Lingang, which was much better than a rank 8 powerhouses' use of the Lingang. Long Haochen could also reach the level of a rank 9 powerhouse in a short period of time through some enhancements, but he didn't have elixirs. This was the gap between him and a true rank 9 powerhouse. Back when he killed the demon god of insight Godseal, there was a certain element of luck involved. Godseal didn't have a domain, and demon gods only had magic crystals and no elixirs. Moreover, Godseal's combat power was far less powerful than his insight ability. If it was a demon god who focused on combat, it would be very difficult for Long Haochen to defeat him alone. In this battle, Chun Hongba had displayed the power of his elixirs. It was obvious that he didn't underestimate Long Haochen and the others at all and had used his full strength right from the start. The soft white light made Chun Hongba's body look like he was in a door of light. Lin Xian's fireball was already in front of Chen Hongba. Chen Hongba pointed with his right hand, and a ball of soft, white light floated out. One of the 6 elixirs around him emitted a soft halo, and a strange-looking, rabbit-like, demonic beast suddenly appeared out of thin air and bit the fireball. Strangely enough, even with the high temperature of the heart flame and its larger body, it didn't explode when it collided with the rabbit-shaped, demonic beast. Instead, it disappeared at an astonishing speed. The rabbit-shaped, demonic beast's stomach instantly swelled up. When it landed on the ground, it spat out a mouthful of flames at Long Haochen and the others. What demonic beast was this? Not to mention Long Haochen. Even Chuning was stunned. She didn't know this kind of rabbit either. The battle had already begun, and both sides had launched an all-out attack. Chen Hongba's incantation rang out immediately. What was even more strange was that the 6 elixir images around him produced a strange echo as he chanted. It sounded as if 7 people were chanting at the same rhythm. Long Haochen raised the divine snail shield of sun and moon in his left hand in front of him, blocking the heart's flame that the rabbit had spat back. In his right hand, the aria of the goddess of light condensed slightly, and he made a flicking motion while sticking close to the ground. Suddenly, a reddish-gold blade of light with incomparably sharp sword intent shot towards Chen Hongba in the distance. One had to know that there was a distance of nearly 100 meters between him and Chen Hongba. Launching the light, severing sword from such a distance seemed to be impossible to hit Chen Hongba's body. However, Chen Hongba's feeling was different. When Long Haochen slashed out with his sword, he felt that his body had been locked in place. Although the light severing sword was extremely far away, the sharpness brought by the sharp sword intent directly stimulated his chanting speed, causing him to be slightly affected. What a strong sword intent! Chen Hongba's pupils shrank slightly. He had to admit that these young people really brought him a lot of joy. At the same time that Long Haochen launched his attack, he also led his team to rush toward Chen Hongba. No matter when, the most effective way to fight against a mage in close combat was to close the distance between the 2 sides. However, not everyone rushed toward Chen Hongba. Han Yu, Lin Xian, and Chen Ying stayed behind. Chen Ying had already begun to chant while sitting cross-legged on the ground. Both of her hands were holding a crystal ball. Her eyes were filled with concentration and determination. Lin Xian was also chanting, but unlike Chen Ying's concentration, during the chanting process, Lin Xian's feet were constantly moving. Every time he stepped on the ground, he would leave a footprint of blue flames. These residual flames began to emit intense spiritual energy fluctuations, increasing his own spiritual energy output. Han Yu stood in front of them, the scarlet berserk sword in his hand pointed diagonally to the ground, and the shield in front of his chest. One after another, low-level light, amplification, magic, spread out from his body. As a guardian knight, Han Yu's brilliance had always been overshadowed by Long Haochen. However, that didn't mean that he wasn't strong enough. On the contrary, if he was in another team with his current strength, he definitely had the qualifications to be the leader of a king-class monster hunters. His aura skills were released extremely quickly, and they weren't released in an area. Instead, they were cast at a fixed location. Each aura landed on a single person. The amplification effect was at least double that of an area halo. Moreover, this amplification effect wouldn't weaken the further away the target was from him. Long Haochen's speed was the fastest. The moment he launched his attack, he had already used light speed flash. The 4 huge spiritual wings on his back unfurled, and with a fierce flap, he crossed the distance of 100 meters in an instant and arrived in front of Chen Hongba. Unexpectedly, he had caught up to the light, severing sword that he had sent out earlier. The aria of the goddess of light swayed on the light blade of the light, severing sword, and the blade of light was absorbed back into the divine sword. Then, the seemingly slow sword slashed towards Chen Hongba. Chun Hongba's chanting didn't stop at all. The moment Long Haochen arrived in front of him, the 6 spiritual pills around him all shone brightly and shattered at the same time, turning into 6 halos that fell on the ground in front of him. With a roar that was bordering on madness, the 6 huge silhouettes were like 6 mountains that completely blocked Chen Hongba's body. They were actually 6 magical beasts that looked like gorillas. Every gorilla was more than 3 meters tall, and their eyes were blood red, filled with tyrannical, killing intent. The first gorilla pounced directly at Long Haochen. With an angry roar, a strong yellow light was released from the 6 gorillas at the same time. Long Haochen only felt his body sink, and he, who was charging at high speed, was unexpectedly pulled down to the ground. Gravity spell. He was very familiar with this earth element magic. The 9th Holy Guard was proficient in this type of magic. The 6 gorillas in front of him were all earth element magical beasts, and they all instantly cast the gravity spell at the same time. Moreover, the 6 of them actually had a stacking effect. There was no time to judge how strong these magical beasts were. Long Haochen still slashed out with the aria of the Goddess of Light. There was no ear-piercing howl. Only a golden red light flashed, and the gorilla that was pouncing towards Long Haochen almost instantly stopped in midair. Following that, a golden red light extended from the top of its head to its crotch, and blood splattered everywhere as it fell to the ground. The powerful gravity spell could restrict Long Haochen's light-speed flash, and with 6 gravity spells stacking together, even a Type 9 powerhouse would be slowed down. However, the gravity spell was unable to slow down Long Haochen's sword intent. That sword intent that had already reached the level of the illuminated sword heart, coupled with the aria of the Goddess of Light. How could it be so easily blocked? The battle truly began at this time. The other 5 gorillas also made their move, 2 of them pouncing towards Wang Yuan and Sima Xian, while the other 3 pounced towards Long Haochen. The gorillas cooperated very well. Of the 3 gorillas that pounced towards Long Haochen, 2 of them directly pounced towards him, while the other one pounded its thick chest, raised its arms, and an intense yellow light blossomed on its palms. A huge rock with a diameter of a meter, formed completely from energy, was directly thrown towards Long Haochen. Long Haochen, who had entered a state of battle, gave off a completely different feeling. His gaze was calm and cold, and his whole body emitted an unstoppable sharpness. He put away the sun-moon divine snail shield, and blue rain and hibiscus of light with a jade-like luster appeared out of thin air. Immediately after, Long Haochen's body spun rapidly on the spot. 2 vortexes of red and green instantly appeared on the battlefield. The terrifying spiritual energy fluctuations also contained a tyrannical and unparalleled suction force. Whether it was the huge rock that was thrown at him or the other 2 gorillas that pounced on him, they were almost all drawn into this vortex in an instant. In the midst of the screams, the 2 gorillas disappeared. The entire vortex only lasted for less than 2 seconds before it suddenly stopped. A red and green intersected, overlapping into a dark blue cross light in the sky, shot out like lightning, and went straight towards the last gorilla. There was no suspense. How could this kind of level 8 earth magical beast resist the combined attack of the 2 magic swords? The 3rd gorilla was instantly smashed into pieces, and the dark blue light blade went straight towards Chen Hongba, who was retreating. The blade storm was followed by the cross slash. In the short period of the blade storm, Long Haochen did not hesitate to consume a lot of his own spiritual energy to display the Linggang, urging the 2 magic swords to launch the cross slash. Hao Yue's evolution helped him to further improve his spiritual energy, and at the same time, it also greatly enhanced Long Haochen's external spiritual energy. In the process of controlling the Linggang, his body suffered much less backlash. Therefore, even without the help of Hao Yue's transformation armor, he could now inject the Linggang into the 2 magic swords. Of course, this also consumed a lot of his spiritual energy. The reason why Long Houchin chose to launch an all-out attack at the beginning was naturally because he had a purpose. He believed that with Chun Hongba's status, he would definitely look down on them. But as the battle continued, this contempt would not last long. He wanted to grasp Chun Hongba's mentality and use the most powerful attack at the beginning to gain the upper hand. As it turned out, Long Houchin's guess was completely correct. Although Chun Hongba had already thought highly of these young people, he was, after all, the temple master of the Soul Temple. In his opinion, no matter how strong these young people were, they were still juniors. It was true that he fought with all his strength, but he did not think that Long Houchin and the others could really threaten him. Until the dark blue light appeared in his field of vision, Chun Hongba really understood that these young people indeed had enough combat power to threaten his life. Taking a deep breath, Chun Hongba shouted in a low voice, and a layer of strong black light suddenly rose from under him. After this layer of black light appeared, it immediately spread and turned into a dark purple halo. Then, 4 rays of light shot out at the same time, merged into one in the air, and bombarded the dark blue light emitted by Long Houchin. Chapter 207. Amidst the violent explosion, Long Houchin's body shook violently, and he couldn't continue his pursuit. Wang Yuan and Sima Xian had already dealt with the guerrillas on both sides. However, they were also affected by the huge recoil and stopped in their tracks. The 3 of them gasped at the same time. Apart from shock, their expressions became even more solemn. Chun Hongba's body had already disappeared after the deep purple light appeared. The deep purple light had also completely unfurled, and the Lord of the Soul Temple was currently at the top of the deep purple light. It wasn't some kind of energy, but a powerful magical beast. The moment this magical beast appeared, the aura in the entire arena trembled. The magical beast was over 40 meters long, and it had a huge pair of wings spread out on its back. Its entire body was covered in deep purple scales, and its figure was slender and majestic. It also carried an incomparable, domineering aura and dragon's might. There were actually 4 heads at the front of its neck, and they were all dragon heads. The color of each dragon head's eyes was different. They were green, red, yellow, and blue respectively. Long Houchin couldn't help but have an extremely peculiar feeling when he saw this magical beast. Didn't this magical beast look a little like an enlarged version of Haoyue? It only had 4 heads, but its aura and cultivation were much stronger than Haoyue's. Without a doubt, this was a level 10 magical beast. Furthermore, it was a level 10 magical beast with 4 attributes. This was the Soul Temple's lord, Chun Hongba's natal beast, a 4-headed chimera. Chimeras were a type of dragon and could also be called subdragons. However, that referred to the most ordinary 2-headed chimeras. If a chimera could cultivate its 3rd head, then it would have the same strength as a true dragon. As for the 4-headed chimera, it was an ancient magical beast. It was definitely a level 10 existence, and a peak level 10 at that. Of course, the 4-headed chimeras had different attributes. Chun Hongba's 4-headed chimera had 4 elements. Among the 4-headed chimeras, it wasn't the strongest in terms of attributes. However, it shouldn't be forgotten that the 4 elements had a very strong enhancement effect. Although it didn't have powerful attributes like light and darkness, there was no doubt that this 4-headed chimera was powerful. It also had a nice name, Star Jade. Chen Inger had already told her companions about the strength of her grandfather's 4-headed chimera in detail before the start of the competition. Among the known level 10 magical beasts, Chun Hongba's 4-headed chimera could definitely be ranked in the top 10. It was much stronger than the Forest Boa King that Long Houchin and the others had encountered. Even the Soray King was no match for it in terms of overall strength. Chun Hongba sat on the neck of the 4-headed chimera, but his expression was clearly somewhat ugly. He did not expect that Long Houchin and the others would be able to force him to summon his natal summon in such a short time. Of course, they had to regain their dignity. The deep chanting continued, and the four-headed chimera unceremoniously launched an attack on Long Houchen's group. The huge tail swept out with the force of a landslide and a tsunami, heading straight for Long Houchen, Wang Yuan, and Sima Xian. The strength of the aura and the ferocity of the power caused the three to be overwhelmed with shock. Their spiritual wings flapped at the same time, and the three immediately flew up without hesitation. Clash head-on? Dream on. Even Sima Xian, who had the most confidence in his own strength, would not do such a foolish thing. That was a level 10 magical beast, and it relied on its body to make a living. The huge tail was almost 20 meters long, and the tip was covered with sharp spikes that looked like sharp blades. If one was swept by it, even if they did not die, they would at least have a layer of skin peeled off. At this point in time, the battle had already entered a white-hot state. Just as Long Houchen's group flew up, the four-headed chimera's 4 large heads simultaneously spat out breaths, and the 4 elemental breaths swept towards Long Houchen's group like a storm. The terrifying spiritual undulations caused the arena to tremble. It was not the first time that Long Houchen faced a level 9 powerhouse. Facing such a situation, he did not show the slightest bit of cowardice. His body in midair, he did not retreat, but advanced instead. The 4 wings on his back flapped, and the cross-shaped slash was unleashed once again. Amidst the ear-piercing tearing sound, that smear of deep blue appeared in midair once again, and actually forcefully tore apart the four-headed chimera's breath from the center. Wang Yuan and Sima Xian had already taken the opportunity to hide behind Long Houchen's back. They also retreated quickly. Only Long Houchen was left in midair to block the attack. A golden light flashed, and Yuting appeared behind Long Houchen at this moment. Immediately after, a platinum-like radiance landed on Chen Hongba, who was chanting an incantation. Chen Hongba only felt an indescribable force suddenly appear, and even with his spiritual cultivation, he was unable to stabilize his body and was pulled straight towards Long Houchen. Traction, an evolved version of traction. Back then, even the Lich King had suffered greatly from this move of Long Houchen's. Previously, when he launched an attack, he did not hesitate to expend all his spiritual energy to attack, not only to seize the initiative, but also to close the distance between him and Chen Hongba. His evolved version of traction was simply too useful against a sorcerer. How fragile a sorcerer's body was once he got close. Don't forget, Chen Hongba had promised not to use any weapons or equipment. As expected, Chen Hongba was shocked to be hit by Long Houchen's traction. However, in the next moment, the one to suffer was not him, but Long Houchen. A violent sound of spiritual energy clashing could be heard, and Long Houchen was sent flying in response. The glaring jade green and red gold light brought about 2 rays of eerie light in the air. That's right, Chen Hongba was indeed successfully drawn by Long Houchen. But don't forget, he still had a natal summoned beast by his side. Being able to raise the cultivation level of a natal summoned beast to level 10 was not as simple as helping him in battle. Seeing that Chen Hongba was about to enter Long Houchen's attack range, the huge four-headed chimera suddenly released a ray of purple light that shone on Chen Hongba's body. In an instant, a layer of purple light appeared on Chen Hongba's body, and when he collided with Long Houchen, he was sent flying. Once the distance between them was more than 100 meters, the traction ability was naturally dispelled. The four-headed chimera did not hesitate to spit out its breath again. This time, the 4 elemental breaths merged into one in the air, turning into a tyrannical elemental storm that headed straight for Long Houchen and the rest. This was the full-force attack of a level 10 magical beast. Gather. Although Long Houchen was sent flying, he was not severely injured. As he shouted, his companions had already gathered. Long Houchen descended from the sky, and a layer of 7-colored golden light blossomed in front of him. The Divine Weapon Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield, Shield Wall, and Divine Block. Boom! An incomparably strong impact appeared in the bestial battle arena, and the surrounding high walls could not help but tremble violently. All the defensive spell formations on the high walls were activated at the same time, and the terrifying spiritual undulations reached their peak at this moment. Chen Hongba only felt cold sweat trickling down his back. He was really close just now. If not for the four-headed chimera's quick reaction, he would have really entered Long Haochen's attack range. Even though he was a level 9 powerhouse, he was still a wizard. If he had really been struck by Long Haochen's sword, he would not have been able to withstand it either. He could clearly feel the terrifying sword intent contained in Long Haochen's two swords. He actually had such a powerful pulling ability. Chen Hongba was slightly panting, and his gaze towards Long Haochen and the rest became filled with vigilance. From this moment onwards, he would no longer underestimate Long Haochen and the rest. Furthermore, although it seemed like Long Haochen and the rest were at a disadvantage, in reality, Chen Hongba was not feeling good either. With the protection of the four-headed chimera, he was confident that he would not be attacked by Long Haochen and the rest, so he was reciting his incantation with all his might. However, under the pull of Long Haochen, his incantation was immediately interrupted, and the effects of the spell's backlash were not pleasant. If not for his strong cultivation, he would have vomited blood just now. A faint light circulated in the air, and the elemental storm could only sweep past the sun-moon divine snail shield from both sides. This kind of omnidirectional, large-scale attack was the least effective against the sun-moon divine snail shield. As a result, even though Long Haochen's spiritual power was rapidly decreasing, he and his companions were still as steady as empty Tai. At this time, Chen Er's incantation was completed. A scene that caused people to feel deeply terrified appeared. Light gates brimming with life energy opened behind Chen Er's back. These light gates were lined up in a row, and the instant the spell was completed, the light gates seemed to line up from one side of the Colosseum to the other. A total of 18 light gates appeared in front of Chen Hongba. This is the Living Soul Gate? Chen Hongba and Sanshui Popo on the viewing platform widened their eyes. They were all powerful summoners and naturally knew how to use the Living Soul Gate. With Chen Hongba's cultivation, he could even use 6 Living Soul Gates at the same time to summon a beast tied to deal with the demons. After Chen awakened as a soul saintess, although her cultivation was still far from enough, the Living Soul Gate skill that she had learned since childhood had evolved, and she could use 6 at the same time. But now, what was going on with these 18? In all of the records of the Soul Temple, there had never been a summoner who could use 18 Living Soul Gates at the same time. Such a frightening scene. After completing this spell, Chen appeared to be very tired. She sat cross-legged and muttered something. The 108 spirit dawn on her soul saint garment suddenly lit up, quickly replenishing her consumption. The greatest use of the soul saint garment was to replenish spiritual power. Its formidable effect was something that Long Haochen's gold foundation battle armor couldn't compare to. Each spirit dan meant the replenishment of 10,000 spiritual power. In other words, the soul saint garment on Chen Er's body could provide her with at least 1,080,000 spiritual power. Of course, this was also limited. No matter how much spiritual power she could provide, the amount of spiritual power she could use at the same time was only her own cultivation. In other words, although Chen was only a 7th rank summoner, she could use 7th rank summoner magic almost limitlessly. Of course, this was only in theory. Using magic didn't only require spiritual power, it also required mental power. Just now, when Chen used so many Living Soul Gates, her spiritual power could support it without any problem, but her mental power was greatly consumed. She had no choice but to concentrate and rest. At least in this battle, it would be very difficult for her to continue using summoning magic. Those were 18 Living Soul Gates. Moreover, with Chen Hongba and Sanshui Popo's abilities, they could naturally see that this wasn't an illusion. Each Living Soul Gate was real. Since when did this last hide so much from him? Could it be that the soul saintess ability was really so frightening? They naturally didn't know that Chunning, or being able to use 18 living soul gates, really didn't have much to do with the soul saintess. This ability originated from her spiritual stove synthesis. Time stacking. At that time, in the Dream Temple, Long Haochen's group of 7, including Zhang Fangfang, apart from Wang Yuan, had all completed spiritual stove synthesis. What was a spiritual stove? It was a treasure of heaven and earth. Just obtaining one was a dream come true for any profession. But Long Haochen and the others had all completed spiritual stove synthesis. When Channing, or his spiritual stove, had just completed spiritual stove synthesis, it wasn't very powerful in many people's eyes. However, as her cultivation increased, the power of her time-stacking spiritual stove also became more and more tyrannical. 3 times the magic casting ability. Although it could only be used once a day, one could imagine how terrifying this explosive power was. Low growls and roars sounded from the 18 living soul gates at almost the same time. Magical beasts started to jump out of the living soul gates, one after another, and pounced towards the 4-headed chimera and Chan Hongba. It had to be said that the quality of Channing, or his living soul gates, wasn't much different from before. The magical beasts that were summoned were still of different levels. There were level 2 and level 3 ones, and there were even level 7 and level 8 ones. The strongest magical beast was only a level 8 magical beast with the same cultivation as her. However, the current living spirit gate was also different from before. It was truly a living spirit gate. They didn't just summon one magical beast and end it. Seemingly endless magical beasts frantically rushed out of the living soul gates. In just a few breaths' time, half of the Colosseum was covered by these magical beasts. This time, even Chun Hongba's expression changed. He was a human, not a god. He was all too familiar with the living soul gates. A summoner could continuously summon magical beasts for 10 minutes after using the living soul gates. The level of the summoned magical beasts was directly proportional to the summoner's cultivation. It must not be forgotten that Chan Ing, was the reincarnation saintess. All of her summoning spells had an additional effect. This living soul gate could last for twice the amount of time. The area of the Colosseum was very limited, and there was also a flight restriction spell. It was impossible to fly too high. Under such circumstances, if Chan Hongba allowed Channing, to fully unleash the power of the living soul gates, there would be no place for them to step in this space. Chan Hongba didn't dare to hold back anymore. His eyes flickered, and he clasped his hands in front of him. His fingers formed a strange hand shape, and he roared something in a low voice. Suddenly, a strong soul storm bloomed from his body, and a milky white halo formed a huge dragon's head behind him. Then, it let out a tyrannical dragon's roar. This milky white dragon's head was so huge that even the huge body of the 4-headed chimera was engulfed by it. With this roar, the milky white light swept out like a monstrous wave. The magical beasts that were charging at the front of the 18 living soul gates immediately stopped when they came into contact with this terrifying white wave. They prostrated on the ground and didn't dare to get up. When this white wave hit the 18 living soul gates, the living soul gates also stopped and no longer released magical beasts. Beast Emperor Domain. It was the Beast Emperor Domain that could suppress or amplify all magical beasts. Among the domains that a summoner could cultivate, this Beast Emperor Domain was definitely second to none. After being stimulated by the domain, the 4-headed chimera's already huge body doubled in size. The terrifying aura made Long Haochen and the rest feel suffocated. This was Chan Hongba's true strength as the Soul Temple's temple master. Even though the only summoned beast that belonged to him on the battlefield was the 4-headed chimera, at this moment the battlefield completely belonged to him. Within the Beast Emperor domain, he was like the master of tens of thousands of beasts. After being covered by the Beast Emperor domain for a long time, Even the magical beasts that rushed out of the living soul gates would be controlled by him. Do you want to continue? Qin Hongba asked coldly. He didn't order the four-headed chimera to continue attacking, as he couldn't hurt the young people in front of him. In his opinion, such a powerful aura was enough to make these young people admit defeat. Of course, we have to continue. Chen Ying, who was concentrating her mental strength with her eyes closed, suddenly opened her eyes, and her body floated up from the ground. At this moment, her body released a layer of strange radiance. It was white, but it was a transparent white color. The 100 beast patterns on the soul saint garment seemed to have come to life, and they moved rhythmically in the white halo. The 108 elixir pills all released dazzling radiance. She had used the stacked spiritual cauldron of time to summon the 18 living soul gates in order to force her grandfather to release the Beast Emperor domain. In their strategic plan, it was her mission to destroy the Beast King's domain. In order to rescue Yang Wenjiao, she had already gathered her companions to face her grandfather's challenge together. How could she not bear more? She was the only one who was most familiar with Chen Hongba's strength and the power of his powerful domain. After exhaling a long breath, Qining, Er's hands rapidly made 3 movements, and her eyes became a terrifying milky white. A white ball of light gradually formed in her palms, and she shouted, "Soul, give!" The white ball of light shot out and landed directly on the crystal ball that was floating with her. In an instant, the entire crystal ball turned into a milky white color. In the next moment, a milky white beam of light shot out in a straight line, heading straight for the core of the Beast Emperor domain that Chen Hongba had released, the huge dragon head. It was strange that even the powerful four-headed chimera didn't dare to block this tiny white beam of light. In an instant, this white beam of light landed on the dragon head of the Beast Emperor domain. A strange scene appeared. The huge dragon head that was spewing out the domain was stimulated by this white beam of light, and it actually trembled violently. Qin Hongba was shocked. He suddenly realized that he was actually unable to control the domain. If he didn't retract the domain, his Beast Emperor domain might actually collapse at any time. A domain was not like spiritual power, which could be recovered after it was used up. Once the domain was broken, it would be a fatal blow to the caster. Was the necromancer demon god Samakina strong? His necromancer domain had been devoured by the Tower of Eternity, and it immediately suffered heavy damage. Not daring to delay, Chen Hongba quickly chanted an incantation and retracted his Beast Emperor domain. The milky white light in the sky instantly rolled back, and the huge dragon head gradually shrank. Without the enhancement of the domain, the four-headed chimera's expanded body shrank again, and the magical beasts on the ground also started to attack again. However, after Qining released that white beam of light, her crystal ball also made a crisp ding sound and broke. She directly fell from the sky. She had overexerted her mental strength and fainted. The 18 living soul gates had lost their masters, and they had also completed their respective missions. One by one, they disappeared into thin air. However, in that short period of time, at least 100 magical beasts had launched an attack on the four-headed chimera and Qin Hongba. In a flash, Han Yu caught Qining, who was falling from the sky, and placed her on the ground. Speaking of which, Chen Ying was able to break grandfather's domain. It was inextricably linked. That's right, Chen Hongba's Beast Emperor domain was already extremely powerful among summoners. But one must not forget whose power Qining inherited as the Soul Maiden. That was the power of the Beast God. How could the Beast Emperor compare to the Beast God? Hence, when she activated the Soul Bestowal skill, it was equivalent to releasing the power of the Beast God. Even the Beast Emperor would tremble in fear. Hence, in front of Qining, Chen Hongba's domain was indeed useless. It was Chen Hongba who told Qining that the Soul Bestowal skill could possibly suppress her domain. At this moment, Chen Hongba really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Since her domain was suppressed, it was obviously impossible to win quickly. Long Houchin's team was equivalent to sacrificing the combat power of a grade 7 summoner to exhaust Chun Hongba's most powerful domain ability. It was definitely a huge profit. Long Houchin didn't rush to attack. The attacks of the 100 beasts were quite fierce, but they couldn't coordinate with them. His figure flashed and appeared in front of Qining. His right hand released a golden light, and he had already sent Qining to the Tower of Eternity without any worries. At this moment, Lin Xian, who had been chanting since Qining, started chanting the Living Soul Gate incantation, finally completed his incantation. A blue spot of light appeared on the fire crystal staff, and immediately after, this spot of light began to continuously brighten. Lin Xian's entire body was surrounded by a liquid-like blue halo. Behind him, a figure that was only 1 meter tall, but full of majesty, floated there. The fire crystal staff pointed forward, pointing in the direction of the 4-headed chimera, and a blue light that looked only as thick as a thumb instantly shot out. This blue light didn't feel like spiritual power, but more like a physical object. Wherever the light passed, the air seemed to clearly become fresher, as if all the impurities in the Colosseum were instantly purified. Fire God's Finger, a powerful grade 8 fire attribute, single target attack spell. Among all the grade 8 fire attribute spells, Fire God's Finger was also ranked among the best. Not only did it require the support of sufficient spiritual power, but also strong control to be able to use this spell perfectly. This was because this spell itself required extremely high control. After the incantation was completed, the fire element had to be compressed to the extreme. If one's control wasn't good, it would backfire on the user, and they might have to bear the power themselves. The fact that Lin Xian dared to use such a difficult grade 8 spell with only a grade 7 cultivation showed his confidence. At this moment, if Qining was still clear-headed, she would understand that Lin Xian felt wronged after losing to her that day wasn't without reason. How could he use such a powerful attack spell against his own comrade? The blue light flickered and instantly crossed the vast sky. The 4-headed chimera's eyes simultaneously revealed a trace of disdain, and the dragon head with the fiery red eyes suddenly lowered its head, and a blazing breath spewed out. The condensed breath spun in a spiral shape in the air, looking like a rapidly spinning flame spear. It collided head-on with Fire God's Finger. Lin Xian used the Heart's Flame to use Fire God's Finger, and naturally displayed the power of this spell to the extreme. It was even close to the level of a grade 9 fire attribute spell. However, the other party's 4-headed chimera was a genuine grade 9 powerhouse. Would he be able to succeed this time? The instant the blue flames and red flames came into contact, an extremely strange scene occurred. The red flames were actually penetrated just like that, and one could clearly see that from within the red flames, a dark shadow rapidly tunneled in and headed straight for the 4-headed chimera's main body. Of course, Lin Xian's abilities couldn't be compared to the 4-headed chimera's. However, although the 4-headed chimera was a grade 10 magical beast, its power was divided among its 4 heads, and its strongest point was that it could use all 4 elements at the same time. Furthermore, it was a powerful magical beast that fused magic and martial arts, and its pure magical power wasn't at the level of a grade 9 spellcaster. Faced with Lin Xian's attack that had been prepared for such a long time, it looked like it was about to suffer a huge loss. The collision of spells was extremely fast, and even if the other 3 heads of the 4-headed chimera wanted to help, it was already too late. Of course, Lin Xian's attack was still greatly weakened by its breath, and the damage caused would definitely not be too serious. However, as a summoner, the natal summon beast was almost like another life for them. So how could Chun Hongba just watch as his companion was injured? With a point of his right hand, another spiritual pill mirror flew out and directly drilled into the chimera's flames, blocking the power of the Fire God's Finger. The blue flames that were much smaller than before immediately flew out diagonally following the guidance of the spiritual pill mirror and flew towards Chen Hongba. The chimera's crisis was resolved. Chen Hongba didn't care about the blue light at all. There was a layer of distorted undulations around his body. The blue light hit the distorted light curtain and instantly dissipated. A summoner's body was even more fragile than a spellcaster's because they could use fewer defensive spells. So how could Chen Hongba not pay attention to his own safety? He still hadn't forgotten about the assassin that disappeared. Hence, he had been maintaining a comprehensive defense. The defensive spell that he was using now was called Soul Protection, and it was a powerful defensive spell that combined spiritual energy and mental strength. Its defensive power was extremely shocking. Although it wasn't at the level of a grade 9, it wasn't far from it. More importantly, this spell consumed very little spiritual energy, so it could be maintained for a long time. Just when Chen Hongba thought that the power of the fire god's finger had ended, the blue light suddenly dissipated and a greenish-black light flashed and disappeared. It forcefully drilled a hole the size of the tip of a needle on the soul protection barrier and directly stabbed towards Chen Hongba. Not good. Chen Hongba was shocked. At this critical moment, he couldn't care less about his appearance. His body suddenly fell back. A blazing heat, filled with a dark aura, almost flew past his scalp, scorching a piece of hair. If he hadn't reacted quickly, he would have been injured. The greenish-black light was like a flame needle, extremely insidiously hidden within the fire god's finger. Only when the power of the fire god's finger was exhausted did the flame needle drill out. Not only was its penetrative power extremely strong, but it was also silent. If it wasn't for the soul protection blocking it and buying time for Chen Hongba, he would have suffered a big loss. Although with his spiritual energy cultivation, he wouldn't be killed by this attack, but being attacked by this flame needle filled with dark aura wouldn't feel good. Lin Xian stomped his foot in the distance, unwillingly saying, "What a pity." Chen Hongba was forced into such a difficult situation. Long Haochen and the others were also shocked, and couldn't help but look at Lin Xian in a new light. Just now, how was that a single spell? It was clearly a mixture of two spells. Where did that greenish-black flame needle come from? They also didn't know. The fire god's finger itself was a spell cast by a rank above, and he was actually able to hide another spell within it. It was clear to see how much control Lin Xian had over fire magic. Just a little bit more. Of course, the person Lin Xian originally wanted to plot against naturally wasn't Chen Hongba, but Chen Er's grandfather. He was targeting the four-headed chimera. Coincidentally, he was lured over by Chen Hongba and almost suffered a great loss. "Brother Yao, what spell is that?" Sima Xian asked in surprise. Lin Xian chuckled and said, "Fire god's finger and hellfire needle, isn't it fierce?" Fierce. Sima Xian was not stingy with his praise and gave him a thumbs up. Conjoined spirit enhancement. Long Haochen shouted, and just as Lin Xian's fire god's finger produced a stunning effect, Long Haochen also summoned Haoyue. His shout was immediately understood by everyone, and other than Kai, or who was still hiding in the dark, everyone else jumped onto Haoyue's back. Where did Lin Xian's hellfire needle come from? Long Haochen also pondered for a while before remembering. Previously, when they were in Illusory Paradise, they had killed a demon god's inheritor and obtained a legacy crown that shone with greenish-black flames. At that time, they had given it to Lin Xian. He was a fire element magician, so he might be able to fuse with it. After that, everyone had long forgotten about the existence of this legacy crown. Now, it seemed that Lin Xian did not fuse it with his own spiritual power. After all, the legacy crown had a dense aura of darkness. If it were to be fused with his heart's flame, it would most likely have the opposite effect. In reality, Lin Xian had refined the legacy crown into a special spell that was hidden in his body. The special flame of the legacy crown could recover on its own, and it was an extremely pure, corrosive flame. Lin Xian's body's maximum endurance was to withstand 3 hellfire needles. After continuous tempering and upgrading with his heart's flame, the power of this hellfire needle was already no lower than a level 8 spell. This was his trump card, and it was the first time he had used it. Therefore, the spell that he had completed previously was still the Vulcan's finger. It was just that, at the last moment, he had fused a hellfire needle into it. This fusion should not be underestimated. To be able to hide the hellfire needle from the Vulcan's finger and even deceive the Magic Temple's temple master, Chen Hongba, this control of spiritual power could be considered master level. After all, Lin Xian was able to control magic that was beyond his level. Behind Long Haochen was Wang Yuan, followed by Lin Xian, Sima Xian, and Han Yu. The 5 of them, as one, swallowed the conjoined spirit-increasing pill at the same time. Long Haochen himself stood at the thick neck where Hao Yue's 6 heads were connected, while the other 4 formed a line behind him. A strong spiritual wave was transmitted through his arm, and Long Haochen's aura instantly increased by several times. The conjoined spirit-increasing increased spiritual power, while the adamantine foundation battle armor also increased spiritual power. What was the difference between the two? The difference was that the conjoined spirit-increasing increased the spiritual power output of Long Haochen for 1 attack, while the adamantine foundation battle armor and the Star King increased the spiritual power output of Long Haochen more. The duration of the conjoined spirit increasing was very short, but it could completely raise Long Haochen's attack power to a whole new level. This was also the ultimate strategy that their team used against strong enemies. After evolving into 6 heads, this was the first time Hao Yue had appeared on the battlefield. His 6 heads were raised high in the air, and the wings on his back flapped. As he flew high into the sky, his 6 heads let out an angry roar. Its amethyst-like scales only needed a weak ray of light to produce a wave-like purple halo. Its 6 heads rose up at the same time. Even though it was far inferior to the 4-headed chimera in terms of cultivation and size, the moment Hao Yue appeared, its aura completely overwhelmed Chen Hongba's summoned beasts. Following this roar, a thick layer of purple energy burst forth from Hao Yue's body and spread throughout the Colosseum. At this moment, the 4-headed chimera was originally dealing with the various magical beasts summoned by the living soul gate. However, the instant this purple energy spread, all the magical beasts, including the 4-headed chimera, raised their heads to look in Hao Yue's direction. The fear they felt was even greater than when they were bathed in the Beast King's domain. Even the 4-headed chimera was no exception. In terms of appearance, Hao Yue and the 4-headed chimera were quite similar. They both had many heads, 2 wings, and a body shape that was similar to that of a dragon. The difference was that the 4-headed chimera's head was more like that of a dragon, or in other words, it had the appearance of a dragon, and its scales were thicker. However, in terms of color, it was clear that Hao Yue, whose entire body was glowing with amethyst light, was more dazzling. The moment the star Jade's gaze focused on Hao Yue's body, this powerful level, 10 magical beasts' gaze immediately froze. It even stopped attacking the magical beasts below it. The huge wings that were originally controlling its body to float in the air started to tremble uncontrollably, to the extent that it could no longer maintain its floating state. With a boom, it directly fell to the ground, crushing a group of low-level magical beasts to death.